But, you know, as we thank God for the morning, make sure that you appreciate each and every time that God has given you to wake up early in the morning to see a new day. And in the spirit of seeing a new day, we appreciate your presence right here on Good Morning Kenya. We have a lot in store for you. On my end of the discussion this morning, I'll be joined with the Vice President in charge of business relations at Mid-Hill Group of Hospitals. We shall be discussing the impact of the COVID-19 on the health sector. We'll be discussing the changes in the business of healthcare and the future implications of this impact. How has the COVID-19 affected health business? A very good morning to you. My name is Ram Aguko.
Today will mark day 41 of the 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew, day 4 of the random mass testing that had been rolled out by the government. So with all these measures being put by the state, why are we continuously recording high numbers? This morning on our segment COVID-19 updates, as we look and break down the numbers for you, we'll look at some of the reasons and factors that might have resulted to these numbers to rise. Could it be the opening of eateries that again had been announced by the state? We look at that as we explore other parts of the of the globe to see how these numbers have been rising on our segment COVID-19 updates. Many thanks for making time this Wednesday morning. My name is Dorina Range. Good morning.
Now, the 6th of May 2020, good morning, I'm Regina Manyara-Gitao, and indeed you're watching KBC Channel 1. Now, in the wee hours of the morning, the United States death toll surpassed the 70,000 mark. That notwithstanding, looking back home, yesterday, Kenya recorded its highest number of COVID-19 cases at 45, 29 of them from Isili Estate. That has brought a lot of debate, especially on social media platforms, with some factions saying that it's a high time government took up more stringent measures to stem the spread of COVID-19. That and so much more is what we're going to be focusing on the GMK News Briefs, and also looking at how Africa in general is handling the pandemic, whose cure is still unknown. Across borders is that Somalia has 700 confirmed cases and 24 deaths. Is Kenya about to flatten the curve, or should we tighten the belt, so to speak, in as far as adhering to the laid down guidelines? Those are questions that are abound, especially on social media, and we invite you to give us your feedback in regard to this issue, as well as many others that we have will be highlighting for you in the course of this program. My Twitter handle is at Ray Manyara. We have Ramagook on Twitter and Dorina Range. The station's official Twitter handle is at KBC Channel 1 TV. Do not go away. Remember, we are broadcasting live on social media platforms, that is Facebook and YouTube at KBC Channel 1. Now, kindly get on to that particular platform if you are not watching from the comfort of your home. We take a short break, but in return, we focus on stories that are making headlines in the last 24 hours. Good morning once again. If you're tuning in, this is KBC Channel 1 and I'm Regina Manyara-Gitao. The Ministry of Health says the government is considering escalating measures in estates that have been identified as hotspots in Nairobi and Mombasa. The drastic proposals coming after the country recorded the highest number of positive cases in a single day since the first case was reported. The total tally of positive cases now stands at 535 after 45 more cases were confirmed, with all the 29 positive cases from Nairobi hailing from Isili Estate.
The number of confirmed coronavirus cases in the country on Tuesday surpassed the 500 mark after 45 more cases were confirmed, the highest number to be recorded in a single day.
Our cumulative figure of those who have tested positive to the COVID-19 stands at 535 people. This, of course, is the highest number recorded in 24 hours ever since the first case on the 12th of March.
The new data saw Eastleigh consolidate itself as the coronavirus red zone in Nairobi after recording 29 new cases.
The 29 cases that you have heard which are from Nairobi are all from Eastleigh. That means that as we speak, there are 63 cases within the Eastleigh area alone. That tells you then that there is community spread happening within Nairobi.
The county of Nairobi is still leading with 317 cases, with Eastleigh accounting for 63 cases, with Kawangware recording 24 cases. Mombasa comes in second with 169 cases, with Old Town alone having a total of 39 cases.
We need to take action in those particular areas, and we are in the process today of consultation with the respective authorities in those counties so that we can determine what action we are going to take.
The ministry cautioning Kenyans against going back to their normal lives and ignoring guidelines already in place, even as 9 more people recovered from the disease, bringing the total of recoveries to 182.
We seem to have come to the conclusion as a society that things have gone back to normal. Today's figures show things are far, far from normal.
Meanwhile, truck drivers have been urged to get tested for coronavirus at the point of origin to minimize the risk of being detained at the country's border points. As the number of confirmed coronavirus cases surpassed the 500 mark on Tuesday, the Ministry of Health says that talks are in top gear to escalate measures, especially in the areas that have been identified as hotspots, especially in the counties of Nairobi and Mombasa. Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
182 recoveries, 14 deaths and 535 cases. A time when the government is urging Wanjiko, you and I, to adhere to the laid guidelines to just mitigate on the spread of the deadly pandemic. Now, efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 disease in the country have intensified, with county administrations partnering with the national government to effect a host of mitigation mechanisms. The efforts coming amid renewed concern over increasing positive cases that have surpassed the 500 mark yesterday.
It has been testing times for county administrations as they seek to adopt best practices in the control of the coronavirus pandemic. In Narok, the war against the COVID-19 disease has been intensified, with health workers working closely with security agents, leaving nothing to chance.
Tutaki hata mtu mmoja aingie Narok akiwa na hiyo shida, kwa sababu akiingiza Narok ile negative tuko naye, tutakuwa sasa na positive na itakuwa a hotspot. Kwa hivyo nyinyi tumeweka katika mlango, mkumbuke ya kwamba kuwekwa kwa mlango uko na jukumu kubwa ya kuchunga wale wako ndani na kuzuia yule mtu ambaye hatakiwa ingie ndani kuingia.
But it is a precarious situation in Wajir County, where livestock traders continue to use the porous Kenya-Somalia border to access the Horn of African nation. Wajir Governor Mohamed Abdi saying the state of affairs is exposing area residents to the deadly disease. The concerns coming after 5 positive cases were recorded in the area over the past 24 hours, following an analysis of 9 suspected cases of persons who were intercepted at the Riba border point in Wajir sub-county.
2 of the 5 cases that tested positive in the last 24 hours were with the 4 earlier intercepted at Diff that managed to escape the police roadblock and made their way to Wajir town unnoticed. The other 3 were on their way back from Mogadishu, Somalia, on a similar livestock trade and were intercepted at Riba of Wajir East sub-county.
Elsewhere, Kirinyaga County Woman Representative Wangoi Ngirishi want vulnerable communities within the region provided with relief supplies in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic.
Waanze kuleta chakula kwa sababu chakula inapelekwa huko kwa semi-arid, lakini wakumbuke Kirinyaga County pia tuko na semi-arid ambayo iko pande ya Mwea ya downstream, ambako pia watu wako na njaa mingi sana, na wale ambao hawako kazini, makazi zimeenda chini.
Meanwhile, Bungoma Anglican Bishop George Mechumo is calling on the government to reconsider easing restrictions on social gatherings and allow controlled services in churches.
Right now, we are fighting the pandemic called coronavirus, and we do not want the attention to be diverted to go to other issues other than the thing that is happening right now, for the sake of the unity of the country and also for the peace of this country.
And the saga surrounding the fate of 7 Kenyans currently holed up at the border of Kenya and Somalia since March took a new twist after a civil society group threatened to institute legal proceedings. Muslim for Human Rights, through its chair, Khalef Khalifa, has written to Internal Security Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiang'i, compelling him to intervene and secure the entry of Kenyans stuck at the border post.
Na serikali ya Kenya lazima ifanye mikakati iwarudisha watu kwa haraka vile itakavyowezekana. Na ikiwa patashindwa kuwarudisha kwa muda fulani, sisi hatuna budi tutakwenda kotini kupata uamuzi wa mahakama.
And Samburu West Member of Parliament Naisula Lesuda has donated 10,000 masks in efforts aimed at cushioning her constituents from the coronavirus disease. Through the Naisula Lesuda Foundation, the legislator said she acquired the masks locally, even as she called on the political class to put politics aside and focus on how to cushion their people from the adverse effects of coronavirus.
Hatutaweza kupigana na hili janga kibinafsi. Tungeomba kwamba wale watu wote ambao wangependa kutusaidia ili tuweze kufikia haswa wale ambao hawajiwezi, kwa sanitizers, kwa masks, kwa sabuni, hata kwa maji na kwa chakula. Tungewaomba sana waweze get in touch na sisi kama Samburu West constituency.
Finally, Muguka traders from Embu County have been warned that failure to follow government guidelines and directives would force the government to ban their trade. Embu County Commissioner Abdullahi Galgalo says there remains a high risk if the traders fail to observe guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health.
Na waomba kwa unyenyekevu, mujue kuwa wakati munapeleka miraa nje ya Embu, munarudi hapa baada ya kuchanganyika na wale watu. Na waomba sana madriver wetu na wale wanaofanya hiyo kazi ya miraa wakienda kule, tafadhali mujihadhari ili msituletee corona.
Now, shock and consternation has greeted the attitude displayed by a section of Kenyans who operate with reckless abandon, oblivious to the threat posed by the deadly COVID-19. Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe has particularly scoffed at the levels of indiscipline and defiance to protocols instituted by the state to contain the coronavirus spread. According to Kagwe, the latest figures show that the country may not be out of the woods yet, especially with ensuing behaviors. Caroline Kamau reports.
This week, the government gave a green light to restaurants in the country to reopen, albeit under strict measures aimed at maintaining social distancing to prevent the spread of coronavirus. This after their closure in March, soon after the country recorded her first coronavirus case. But as Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe observes, Kenyans have taken advantage of this, openly disregarding regulations in place.
It is true that it has been abused. It is a fact of life that people have been going to pubs or to eateries. They order one sausage with 2 beers. They eat that one sausage. Anakula hiyo sausage moja na bia mbili. Anatoka hapo, anaingia hoteli ingine. Huko anakula bia mbili ingine na sausage ingine moja. Anaingia ingine, anauliza chungwa, hadi sasa ni dessert. Na ingine mbili. Now, my friends.
A tough talking Kagwe noting that this is making it difficult for the government to ease restrictions instituted.
We start taking steps. Let not the same individuals start complaining that, you are going backwards and forwards. That's the challenge that will come. The Ministry of Health doesn't seem to know what it is doing because it makes 2 steps forwards and then 1 step back. If that is the case, so be it. What we cannot allow is a situation where we begin to threaten our people just because of some few people who honestly cannot behave.
Indeed, the latest figures justify the minister's point of view, given that the country has now recorded its highest figures yet in just 24 hours.
Matter is, where we are right now, you are either with Kenyans or you are against us. When you are against us is when you expose other Kenyans. You cannot be behaving totally normally and then looking at every other Kenyan trying so hard and expect that you are going to be applauded for your action.
And there is the concern that the situation might even get worse in the coming days. He, however, does not regret the decision to lift the ban on restaurants, however, saying that the government will not hesitate to announce more stringent measures that will help deal with the situation.
I do not regret, because the idea, it came from a good place, and it is not a Mutahi Kagwe decision. These are people who are used to working in a hotel, working in a butchery, working in an income-earning facility that do not need government help. They don't need government help usually. So the idea is, why do we are trying so hard not to transport people who usually don't need help to become people who need welfare.
Caroline Kamar reporting for Channel 1 News.
Stan speaking there, Cabinet Secretary for Health, Mutahi Kagwe. Now, hundreds of families from Budalangi constituency in Busia have been displaced, while thousands have been forced to seek shelter on higher grounds as ongoing rains continue pounding the region and wreaking havoc. With the weatherman issuing a grim outlook, area residents are calling on authorities to find lasting solutions to the perennial flood problem in the region, as Chola Simon reports.
The clouds menacingly tower over Budalangi. So imposing, they seem to sarcastically admire the trail of destruction underneath.
Maji imeenda na vitu vyangu, nyumba yangu imeanguka yote. Sina chochote, sina kitu, hata njaa pia nauma, sina chochote, vitu vyote vimeenda.
Tuna maafa, pale tunaweza zika watu wetu, hata wakikufa leo tumezika mwingine kwa maji. Tunachimba, tunazoa maji, tunaweka mawe. La pili, tunahofia hizi ugonjwa yenye iko ya corona hii itazidi kutumaliza kabisa, juu hata maji safi yenye tunaweza tumia hakuna. Kwa mama na watoto, hata saa hizi nimetoka huko kwa milima kutafuta ng'ombe zangu na bibi na watoto. Siku mbili sijawaona.
In the villages, locals work through the floods with every available means in literal exodus to the higher grounds. This has been the new normal over the last few days as the area residents come to terms with the raging floods. Thousands have been displaced and there's literally no silver lining on the clouds. The most affected villages include Mau Mau, Budalangi, Harambe and Nyambare. Local wants clean water, nets and drugs, but also want the government to work on a long-term solution that will check the flooding menace.
Wanaanza wakakuja kutoa watu katika maboma zao wakisema daiki inaanza, ati watawalipa. Wakawa kwamba wamekadiria kulipa kiwango fulani cha mwenye mahali pale amekaa, ambapo daiki ilikuwa ipitie.
Kulingana walikuwa wanachukua mashamba, watu wanataka kutengeneza daiki, watu wahame wanunue area zenye ziko juu, lakini kulikuwa na ukora ndani. Juu ile pesa walikuwa nalipa haiwezi tosha kukugurisha hapo uende utafute shamba fulani na ujenge. Sasa hapo haikuenda na watu vizuri, kuna wale wajalipwa baka leo.
Busia is amongst the 29 counties hard hit by floods in the country, even as the weatherman warned the situation is set to continue in the coming weeks. Achola Simon, reporting for Channel 1 News from Busia County.
Now, the government of Somalia has promised to cooperate with Kenyan agencies in the probe into aircraft crash that killed 6 people on Monday. The undertaking comes after Nairobi wrote to Mogadishu to investigate the unclear circumstances under which the light aircraft cargo flight came down in its airspace. Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo made a telephone call to his Kenyan counterpart Uhuru Kenyatta on Tuesday morning, expressing regret over the tragic incident. Sefin Achieng'ouma reports.
Kenya and Somalia have agreed on a joint probe into a plane crash that occurred on Monday involving a Kenyan cargo plane. In a telephone call to President Uhuru Kenyatta on Tuesday, Somalia President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo expressed regret into circumstances surrounding the crash and disclosing that he had instructed his country's civil aviation authorities to immediately mount an investigation into the crash of the aircraft, which was supporting humanitarian operations in the country. President Kenyatta has welcomed President Farmajo's invitation to Kenya's civil aviation authorities to join in the investigation into the aircraft crash, emphasizing the need to swiftly but thoroughly conclude the process. In a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, President Farmajo invited the Kenya civil aviation authorities to team with their Somalia counterparts with a view to complete the investigations expeditiously. This undertaking from Farmajo coming after Nairobi wrote to Mogadishu, demanding swift investigations into the incident, warning that it could harm humanitarian aid deliveries in Somalia. In light of the incident, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, working with other agencies, noted that it shall keenly monitor the investigation of the tragic incident and will collaborate with all to bring closure and resolution to the incident. For Channel 1 News, I'm Safin Acheng Oma.
Now, high-ranking health and ministry officials were put to task by members of parliament over how monies set aside to boost the war on COVID-19 were utilized. Amid allegations that part of the 1 billion shillings kitty cannot be accounted for, Health Permanent Secretary Susan Mochache maintains that the matter has been blown out of proportion as prem scrutiny shows that there are no monies that have been lost. Among the issues the lawmakers sought answers for include allocation of 42 million shillings and another 4 million shillings for ambulances, tea and snacks, respectively.
Public uproar greeted expenditure released by the Ministry of Health over its operation in a span of 2 months. At the center of this outcry are allegations of misuse of funds set aside for the fight against COVID-19. Born out of this, the National Assembly Departmental Committee on Health has weighed in and wants the ministry to clear the air over the matter. Health PS Susan Mochache, who appeared before the committee on Tuesday, expressing regret over the direction the matter has taken. Mochache, who fielded questions from members of parliament, was particularly apologetic over the manner in which information has been relayed to the public. The PS, however, told the Sabina Chege-led committee that out of 1 billion shillings allocated by the Treasury, some monies had been allocated to the Foreign Affairs Ministry to facilitate the support of students in COVID-19 epicenter in Wuhan and China. She says a further 75 million shillings was channeled to the Ministry of Defense, while another 10 million shillings was given to the National Youth Service towards provision of security at isolation centers. According to Mochache, Kenyatta National Hospital has been allocated 150 million shillings to equip and provide additional beds to Mbagathi Hospital. Recruitment of 568 human resource health staff at Kenyatta University Referral Center was allocated 245 million shillings. It also emerged that 288 staff members at Mbagathi Hospital will be employed for 1-year term contract at a total of 125 million shillings, while 1,059 county staffs will be employed at a total cost of 498 million shillings. According to the PS, a request has been made to the Treasury to provide 300 million shillings for masks to address the issue of shortage of masks. Amid concerns over the alleged exorbitant quarantine fees, Mochache noted that the government was working on modalities to settle all quarantine fees so as not to prohibit Kenyans from undergoing testing. As of May 4th, 2020, counties such as Nairobi, Kisumu, Uasin Gishu, Mombasa, Kilifi, Wajir, Busia, Machakos, Trans Nzoia and Kericho had been given the green light to test for COVID-19. Reporting for Channel 1 News, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Calling for transparency and accountability in as far as the fight of COVID-19 is concerned. Now, crossing over to a success story of one of its kind during this time is that Murang'a County has launched a unique intensive care unit as part of the administration's efforts to enhance its preparedness in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. The 35-bed capacity facility, which was constructed in a record 19 days, will offer free services for patients admitted at the ICU for the next 3 months.
Tuesday, the 5th of May, marked a new dawn for the residents of Murang'a County as they witnessed the launch of one of the largest intensive care units in Mount Kenya region.
This ICU has everything.
If there is any small item which has not arrived, it might be only because of the border issues with corona.
Constructed at a cost of 25 million shillings, the 35-bed capacity ICU was completed within 19 days, short of the 21 days deadline. The ICU is equipped with 35 beds, 15 ventilators, as well as dialysis machines and physiological monitors. While the intensive care unit is divided into different sectors, we are standing inside the high dependency unit, whereby one is taken just after they are taken out of the intensive care unit. Other sections include the pediatric section, the isolation section, and the dialysis section. Dr. Kanyi offers an insight into the operations at the facility.
With the bed is also attached, there should be a suction machine, like you can see one here. In case a patient has aspirations or circulations, they need to be sucked. That's used for that. Then we have the monitor there. The monitor is to monitor how the patient is doing in terms of breathing, in terms of the heartbeat.
Dr. Margaret Muyoro, head of Senior Critical Care Unit, says the county administration has already recruited 35 critical care nurses through a competitive process.
And I can testify that the nurses which will be working here, they are highly qualified, registered and registration by the Nursing Council. We did an interview like 4 times last week. And we are able to get 35 critical care nurses. Some of them are from all the way from Nairobi. I don't want to mention the facilities, but they are inclusive of everyone from this Republic of Kenya.
The County Governor Mwangi Wairia saying the county will have a functional cancer center by December as part of his administration efforts to improve healthcare in the region.
So we put in place a process whereby we are immediately after this, because we really want to make this a center of excellence. We are starting, and I don't mean a cancer unit, a cancer hospital. 200 beds, fully fledged, and it doesn't matter the cost, and we must present that cancer hospital to cancer patients before the end of this year.
Well, it is a ray of hope to the residents of Murang'a County, as they'll not have to go all the way to Kenyatta National Hospital to seek intensive care unit services, as this has now been brought to their doorsteps at the Murang'a Level 5 Hospital. Reporting for Channel 1 News from Murang'a County, I'm Sarafina Robbie.
Indeed, that's an ICU facility in Murang'a County with a 35-bed capacity. Congratulations to the leadership of that particular county. Indeed, you're leading from the front. Now, the number of coronavirus-related deaths around the world has surpassed 250,000, according to data compiled by Johns Hopkins University. United States remains the country with the highest number of fatalities, accounting for above 70,000. Italy has over 29,000 deaths, while the United Kingdom has nearly 29,000 cases. The number of confirmed cases now stands well over 3.7 million, while nearly 1.2 million people have recovered from the disease.
Some 252,957 people around the world have now died from COVID-19, according to data compiled by Johns Hopkins University. The number of confirmed cases exceeds 3.6 million, while nearly 1.2 million people have recovered. More than $8 billion have been pledged to help develop a coronavirus vaccine and fund research into the diagnosis and treatment of the disease. This coming as the World Health Organization says 108 potential COVID-19 vaccines are in development around the world, according to documents posted on its website. 8 of the potential vaccines have been approved for clinical trials. Meanwhile, at least 1.21 million cases of coronavirus have been recorded in the United States, including 68,925 deaths, according to Johns Hopkins University's tally. On Monday, they recorded 22,247 new cases and 1,240 deaths. And Italy is among countries in Europe and around the world that began cautiously easing lockdowns imposed to curb the spread of the coronavirus. The daily number of coronavirus deaths registered in Spain remained below 200 for a third consecutive day, the country's health ministry said. The overall coronavirus death toll in the country rose to 25,613. And indigenous leaders in Brazil have asked the World Health Organization to set up an emergency fund to help protect their communities from the coronavirus. In a letter to WHO, the group asked for help to provide personal protective equipment that is unavailable to health workers in tribal reservations and villages. Malaysia and India are among countries in Asia that began to ease parts of their lockdown starting on Monday. Elsewhere, New Delhi authorities have imposed a 70% tax on the retail price of alcohol after social distancing violation occurred when liquor shops opened for the first time in 5 weeks on Monday. For Channel 1 News, I am Emily K. Bade.
To the local scene is that a senior Kenya Forest Service officer is nursing serious injuries after he was attacked during an eviction exercise in KBC Forest in Samburu County. The latest development coming as the Kenya Forest Service intensified efforts to reclaim the country's forest cover.
It has been a race against time by the government and environmentalists to reclaim the country's forest cover, with continued degradation blamed for adverse weather patterns in the country. And as part of efforts to realize the aspirations, government principal secretaries are this week taking advantage of the long rains to plant trees in different parts of Nairobi County.
Because we haven't treated our environment kindly, so it is hostile, it's complaining. It is upset with us. We have to do something urgently.
600 seedlings were planted today at the Wangari Maathai corner in Karura Forest during the exercise that saw officers from the Kenya Forest Service under the leadership of its Chief Conservator of Forest Julius Kamau partner with other stakeholders as part of the national tree planting campaign that has seen 1 million seedlings planted across the 107 forest stations in the month of April alone. The exercise is among a number of tree planting activities scheduled to take place during this week within Nairobi County, where the Ministry of Environment and Forestry has mobilized principal secretaries to champion tree growing at designated green spaces in the county.
And therefore, what we are urging Kenyans is, if every Kenyan of the 45 million was plant a tree, a single tree, marking your birthday during this season, we are able to push this country to more than 10%, even before 2022.
This, even as a senior Kenya Forest Service officer was seriously injured in the course of his duties in Samburu County. Chief Inspector Geoffrey Okey was addressing people who had recently settled in Tamiyoi area when he was ambushed by a knife-wielding Moran who severed parts of his right hand.
Wengi. But wakati waliona askari wamekok bunduki, kila mtu alianza kutapakaa akitoroka hapa na pale. Yeye akiwa moja hapo, lakini wakati askari walikok niliwaambia don't shoot.
The suspect was among a group of about 50 Morans who were opposing government's directive that people should vacate the forest after persons who were living in the area left the forest voluntarily to pave way for tree planting and conservation. Kenya Forest Service officers and other stakeholders that attended this event here today, the message is one and one alone. Let us heal nature so that nature can take care of us. Yusuf Farah, Channel 1 News, Nairobi.
Now to the court is at the hearing of a case where Kilifi Deputy Governor Gideon Saburi is accused of failing to self-quarantine over the COVID-19 disease will now be heard on the 4th of June after the prosecution applied for more time to conclude investigations. Saburi is out on bond after Mombasa court granted him bail.
Led by Senior Counsel Edgar Mlamala, the prosecution team cited challenges in conclusion of the investigations, including dusk to dawn curfew and partial lockdown, which they say has essentially restricted movements between Kilifi and Mombasa counties. Resident Magistrate Christine Ogweno granted the prayer adjourning the case to 4th June of 2020.
I will therefore allow the prosecution time to enable the investigators secure all relevant material they intend to supply upon the defense for trial. I will also allow the defense's application and direct the investigating officer to supply on or before the pretrial date all documents as requested by the defense through Mr. Kithi and itemized in the handwritten proceedings of today as Roman number 1 to 7. Parties by consent hereby agree to return for pretrial on the 4th of June 2020.
The defense team, led by Senior Counsel George Kithi, accused the prosecution of taking too much time in concluding the investigations. The defense team want the prosecution to avail before the court a list of samples applied to Kemri on 18th of March the year 2020. Any signed documents declaring samples to Kemri for testing, as well as a list of reagents used to conduct evaluation of the purported samples taken from the accused.
The position remains that Deputy Governor was never tested by Kemri on 18th of March, so that on 21st March the results. He is never tested. Number two, he never submitted himself to Kemri for any test to be done. But number three, and what is important and why we want to do our own audit, is because as at the time, the country never had a formula to test COVID-19, because we started receiving our first patient on 13th of March. By 5th of March, there was nothing.
The deputy governor was charged for willingly exposing himself in public while suffering from an infectious disease without taking proper precautions, contrary to Section 28A of the Public Health Act, Cap 242 laws of Kenya, charge that he has since denied. On April 16th, the year 2020, Saburi was granted a 200,000 shillings cash bail by Principal Magistrate Elvis Michieka and ordered to surrender his travel documents, besides not contacting witnesses. He was also ordered to self-quarantine himself for 14 days. Reporting for Channel 1 News from Mombasa County, I'm Michael Mondiga.
Now, in what is that puts a cap on what has been making headlines in the last 24 hours. But now, if you just have an overview, a quick overview of stories that we've been following up on this end, and as far as the business is concerned, is that Kenya will know the extent of damage that has been caused by food crops, rather locusts have caused on food crops in a month's time. That is after a survey is going to be conducted in partnership with FAO. Further, investors with the local bourse have lost 173 billion shillings worth of paper money due to the coronavirus pandemic. Then is that the construction timeline of the Lamu Port South Sudan Ethiopia Transport Corridor, fondly referred to as LAPSTA, is well on course despite the coronavirus pandemic that we are experiencing. Remember, you can get further details in regard to this on our website, that is www.kbc.co.ke. Now, as you see there on the screen is Doreen Arange, who's about to brief us on what we have on the papers this morning.
Exactly, time for our In the Headlines segment, and as it is tradition, we begin with the People's Daily. This is the front page of the People's Daily this morning. The caption is Magoha outlines roadmap to exam. So there's some of the measures that have been put in place by the ministry for learners, even as we continue fighting this coronavirus pandemic. And just to read some of these measures that have been put in place, there are a raft of measures, but I'll just read a couple of them. One of them is in regards to matters syllabus, and it says that second term half-term will be shortened by 4 days. August holiday will be shortened by 2 weeks, and school day will be adjusted to have longer hours. Remember that learners are going to lose about 2 months just because they are at home in this time. Another measure is in regards to online lessons, where it says that they sensitize the public about out of classroom learning programs to gauge level of outreach and feedback. So in as much as yes, they will continue sensitizing the public, they will also try to see the gauge of the outreach and feedback. This just essentially means that they'll be trying to see how this online platform, to what extent are learners able to access this platform. Another one is in regards to examination, and it says that the calendar for administering KCPE and KCSE exams remains unchanged, barring any intervention. Still sticking with matters education, it continues to say that the government proposes drastic measures to recoup lost learning time, especially for candidates following the closure of schools as the 1 month extended holiday begins. Remember that it was mentioned that schools might reopen on June 4th. So that means, again, it's another 1 month for learners to be at home. On the top of the front page, again, this is Beach Boy who stole the heart of billionaire's daughter. This is Tekra Muigai, the daughter of the CEO Keroche Breweries, who passed away over the weekend, so investigations are still ongoing to ascertain the reason for her death. And also on the sidebar, we have the numbers. As of now, we stand at 535 confirmed cases in the country with 182 recoveries. And also there's a bite here from the CS where he threatens to close eateries even after they were reopened last week, in as much as, yes, there were measures that had been put in place for those that wanted to open hotels and eateries. This story has been fleshed out from page 6 all through page 19. So let's see what more is inside the paper this morning. And on the story that was on the front page, this is in regards to Tekra Muigai, the daughter of Keroche Brewery CEO. So it says that how Beach Boy met, fell in love with Keroche Harris. So Omar Lali, who is the Beach Boy, 50 years of age, the man at the center of investigations into the death of Keroche Brewery's Harris, Tekra Muigai, is a Beach Boy who acts out a living carrying luggage for tourists visiting Lamu Island. So this is what he does for a living. It continues to say that Lali also works as a boat operator when there are no tourists to take out for excursion. And it says that it was during one of these boat rides in 2017 that the guy, Lali, met Tekra, the daughter of the Keroche Brewery CEO Tabitha Karanja. And the residents in this specific area, this is in Mombasa County, they say that the two had lived together at a hotel since March before moving into an apartment. Again, it was announced that yes, the daughter of the CEO passed away last weekend. So this is something they are probing again to ascertain the cause of her death. In regards to examinations and learners, it matters education, Magoha's new calendar spares national exams, where it says that the government has proposed drastic changes to the school calendar to recover lost time, time lost to coronavirus pandemic, even as it insisted that national exams will be conducted as scheduled. And again, some of the measures, in addition to the ones I mentioned, have also been spelled out in this article, just to see how learners can cope and how they can continue with their examinations in as much as, yes, you're battling coronavirus pandemic. Still on matters education CS vouchers for e-learning effectiveness, where it says that the Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor George Magoha, yesterday vouched for the effectiveness of online and electronic delivery of lessons across the country. So this is what the Education CS is doing, just ensuring that e-learning can be able to be e-learning platforms, at least for learners can be able to get, see how best learners can ensure that they continue getting e-learning in this time.
All right, moving on to the Standard newspaper this morning. I would like to dispense of the front page, and we have a story that has been highlighted on the People's Daily. And that is the big story there on the front page of the Standard, the man who loved Keroche Harris. In an exclusive interview, Lal Omar, who finds himself at the center of a probe into Tekra Karanja's death, opens up on how a chance meeting transformed into a 10-month love roller coaster. Pictured in, we have a photo of the two. And picture there also of Java House, where Omar stayed with the Tekra Karanja. And still on the front page, Ruto's men outwit Raila team in House Watchdog. We'll be taking a look at that inside the Standard. On the front page, what awaits learners when schools reopen? EPL could have shorter matches when it restarts. And also on the front page, still at the top, we have what has been revealed, the deadly chain of transmissions. Pictured in there, we have a photo of the CS of Health, that is Mutahi Kagwe. As government announces 45 new infections, mostly in Nairobi's Eastleigh, we lift the lead on how COVID-19 has been spreading within our community. 45 COVID-19 cases announced yesterday. That is dispensing on the front page. Now, let's take a look at what is inside on the story of Keroche Breweries that has been given a full cover. Why would I kill my love? Asks man at center of Keroche Harris death probe. Fisherman Lal Omari says they fell in love on the pristine beaches of Lamu in a 10-month romantic escapade that took him to Tanzania and Ethiopia. He rushed her to hospital. Remember, this was the events that leading to her death. On June 6th, 2019, the man, that is the night it all started. Omari claims they met in Lamu's Peponi restaurant on April the 23rd. That is the night Tekra fell down the stairs, and that is the hotel where they were in. And on April the 24th, Tekra is evacuated from Lamu to Nairobi for emergency treatment. She is admitted at Nairobi Hospital. Remember, they had taken her to a nearby dispensary where medical attention was needed. Further medical attention was needed in regards to that, which was not available there at the moment. And on May 2nd, Keroche sends out a statement saying Tekra has died. And on May 4th, Omar is presented in court but is not charged as police ask for 21 days to probe the matter. Remember, she was rushed to hospital when an emergency medical evacuation plane to Nairobi and even spent night at the Karanja home. Now he finds himself behind bars over the death of the daughter of a billionaire industrialist. Get to read more about that. Now to dispense on just one more thing on the COVID-19. Tougher measures on the way, Kagwe warns. Health CS accuses some Kenyans of violating measures to fight the disease. 9 more patients tested negative, bringing the total number of recoveries to 182. Kenyans should get ready for tougher measures as government enforces measures to contain the COVID-19. There we have tabulated the number of patients per county. Just to give an example of Nairobi, has 318 cases. County number 22, that is Kiambu, has 6 cases. County number 34, that is Kajiado, has 2 cases, and so on and so forth. That is the statistics, the numbers there. Tougher measures on the way, Kagwe warns.
Now crossing over to 2 papers this morning. So let's start with the Daily Nation. So on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning is a headline there that seems to be repeating itself across all the dailies that we have this morning, and is the issue of why various hotspots face a total lockdown. Yesterday, Kenya recorded its highest number since March 13th, that is 45. Among them, 29 were residents of Isili Estate in Nairobi, and the rest from Mombasa Old Town. The pages on the story is fleshed out for you on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Now, still keeping up with the issues of the lockdown, is there's a nurse there is from Dr. Lois Achieng Ombajo, senior lecturer at the Department of Medicine in the University of Nairobi, is a consultant at the Kenyatta National Hospital, says it will get worse before it gets better. Several questions there that have been put to her, and one of them is the assessment. What is your assessment of the current infections there? And she's quoted there saying that so the stringent measures put in place in the first instance have helped us to be where we are now. Going forward, we probably will see more cases, and it will get a little worse before it gets better. Now, that's the main story among the main stories that we have that has been captured on the Daily Nation this morning, including, we can take it more to a more business-like stories that nowhere to hide dirty money cash as the law catches up. This is on the back page of the Daily Nation this morning, and it says there it's an end of the road for looters of public coffers. You think that this is a directive that is going to, stem the issue of graft? Well, victory as it is, because a case was thrown out by the Court of Appeal. Dealt a blow to those with riches acquired through dubious means. Get details of these stories and so much more on the daily newspaper. Now, on the Star, in conclusion, is at the front page, has also captured the story that has been is repetitive across other dailies. The issue of the Keroche heiress and her partner there, the mysterious Omar, who is to spend 21 days in a cell as authorities continue with the investigation, and also the issue of Isili. Now, this here gives more details as to how those numbers got there. So there's an interesting story there that says how an imam spread COVID-19 in Isili. Now, despite knowing his status, the cleric visited mosques and houses. That's a story that you can get on your copy of the Star this morning, including so many other stories that have been highlighted, stories that have been making headlines also in the counties. Get your copies of the Daily Nation and the Star subsequently to get more details on that. Now we wind up on the segment of In the Headlines this morning, so you can get your various copies depending on your taste and preference. And we're just about to get into a conversation to look at the economic and social impact of the current tax policies. Just last week, or some few days back, President Uhuru Kenyatta ascended to the Laws Amendment Bill 2020. Details are coming up in not too long in a discussion with an expert here in studio who is none other than the chair of ISPAC, Madam Rose Maura. So do keep it right here. Remember, we are live and we invite you to give your feedback in regard to, do you think these tax measures are in the short term or long term going to help Kenyans during this COVID situation and post-COVID? Send in your SMSs, your tweets. Our Twitter handle is at KBC Channel 1 TV. Mine is at Ray Manyara. We will be focusing on that. Now over to you, Ram.
All right, and as we continue with this, also still in the headlines, just to take a look at what is how the COVID-19 is affecting the education sector. We have also highlighted inside the Standard, learners to spend more hours in school. That is what the CS says. And there is a quote given by the Education Cabinet Secretary, George Magoha, and I quote, "The selection of the schools as isolation centers followed criteria that prioritize boarding facilities and closeness to the treatment facilities." End of quote. So CS Magoha says that they will also reduce the August school holiday by 2 weeks to the time lost during the pandemic. There are reports that were given out, and these reports warns that the effects of closing schools for a long period could last a lifetime. And the CS said that the Ministry of Health will fumigate the buildings before handing them over to the Ministry of Education. It emerged from reports by Ministry of Education's Kenya Basic Education COVID-19 Emergency Response Plan that the effects of closing schools for long could last a lifetime in some cases. Schools are hubs of social and human interaction. 90,000 schools are closed and 18 million pre-primary, primary and secondary school learners are at home. This is what the CS says, that learners are to spend more hours in school. Now, just to dispense more on the issue, on the effect of COVID-19, there is, someone may wonder, how is this transmitted? Because we normally say that the disease does not move by itself. It needs you. It needs somebody to move it from one place to another. We are the ones who move it. Now, how one corona case leads to deadly chains that fuel spread, that is in the Standard. A single exposure can reach as many as 37 people, each of whom start their own transmission chains wherever they are. There is a different charts they are given in Kawangware transmission chain and Kilifi Mombasa transmission chain, how it moves from one person to many. Residents in Kawangware Estate in Nairobi are pictured in there who go about their business ignoring the social distancing guidelines, increasing their risk of contacting coronavirus. Tabulated there, how one person can be able to affect one friend, a child, to another friend, or to a house help, and that house help goes on to infect or transmit the disease or the virus to another person. How one corona case leads to deadly chains. That is highlighted there also inside the Standard newspaper.
Yeah, we continue unpacking more of what is in the Daily Nation this morning, and to some politics now. This is again also a story that was there yesterday in the same paper. Sonko terms fraud claims intimidation over his NMS stance. Remember, there's been a lot of wrangles going on between the county governor and the Nairobi Metropolitan Service. So this continues to say that Nairobi Governor Mike Sonko yesterday defended himself over claims of possible fraud in the purchase of multi-million shilling building belonging to the Kenya Railway Staff Retirement Benefit Scheme. Continues to say the EACC, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, is reportedly investigating that specific deal in which Sonko confirmed he has paid 144 million Kenyan shillings and has requested the sale be halted pending the probe. So this is just what is happening in regards to the county government, and also continues to say that the governor, Mike Sonko, said the alleged probe was malicious, all right, and could be a move to intimidate him to go slow on some political and legal decisions he has taken in the last few weeks after the Nairobi Metropolitan Service took over some key city function. Again, the governor kept saying that he was not aware of what he was signing. In essence, he was not given enough time to read and understand what he was signing. So really, it looks like the wrangles between Nairobi Metropolitan Service and Governor Mike Sonko will continue for a while. Still sticking with matters politics, how Ruto allies plotted to deny Ongeri County Public Accounts and Investments Committee. So this was an election that was done, and Senator Ledama Olekina emerged as the chair of the County Public Accounts and Investment Committee. But it now says that it has now emerged Deputy President William Ruto allies in the Senate schemed to deny the Orange Democratic Movement's preferred candidate the chance to chair the powerful committee. So the ODM's preferred candidate was Sam Ongeri, but he did not win and to get this chair. So the, Olekina won, got the seat, and so there just wrangles in between the ODM party. So during Monday's elections to replace Homa Bay Senator Moses Kajwang, whose term ended, Narok's Ledama Olekina trounced his Kisii counterpart Sam Ongeri to win the coveted seat. But however, Kina's win was shortly contested by Minority Leader James Orengo, and this is what James Orengo said. He said that as ODM, they were dissatisfied with the conduct and the outcome of the election and threatened to withdraw their membership from the oversight team. So how that will pan out, again, only time will tell, because then it looks like wrangles are not just being witnessed in the Jubilee Party, not just between NMS and the county governor Mike Sonko, but also in the ODM party. That's just where wrangles are being seen. Now, coming to matters coronavirus, coming back to matters COVID-19. So ANGA welcomes Kenya's spike in COVID-19. Remember, as of now, we are at 535 confirmed cases in the country after 45 new cases were confirmed yesterday. And so following the exponential spike in the new infection, an angry Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe warned Kenyans against an increasingly casual attitude. So he said the government would be compelled to enforce more stringent measures, including closure of hotels and restaurants that were reopened last week. Remember, last week the government had given a raft of measures, especially for hoteliers and eateries, on what they need to do if they were to reopen. But now they're saying that they might close that. They might close the hotels as well as eateries because of how casual Kenyans have been treating this situation. So this is what the CS said. He attributed the high numbers of cases to failure to adhere to safety protocols. And he said that somehow, somewhere along the line, we seem to have come to a conclusion as a society that things have gone back to normal. So the day's figures, which were yesterday's figures, they are far from normal. So just citing that things are far from normal. We are taking things as normal as we may, but he says that things are far from being normal, and they will introduce more stringent measures, among them probably closing of the eateries in as much as they had been reopened last week. Now, if you thought that Eastleigh area was the only place where residents there were bringing a bit of contention in terms of getting tested, well, it just doesn't look like it's only Eastleigh. So there are also issues in terms of testing in Mombasa. Remember that Nairobi as well as Mombasa County are now being regarded as the hotspot of this virus. And so protest halt Mombasa mass testing. The ongoing mass testing for the novel coronavirus at Old Town in Mombasa County has been halted due to hostility from residents. Mombasa County Chief Public Health Officer Aisha Abubakar said The exercise was stopped on Monday after 3 days of push and pull between health officers and the residents there. So there has been a push and pull between residents of Old Town Mombasa County and the health officers who've been wanting to test the residents there. But remember that yesterday I was also having a discussion with a health officer, and she was telling us that it is important for Kenyans and individuals to get tested. It is for their own benefit. But that is where we bring a close to we bring our segments in the headlines to a close. Remember, we've been sampling for you the Daily Nation, the Star, the People's Daily, as well as the Sun and as the Standard. We take a break, but plenty more after this break.
I found out that my father is in Patliputra.
How did you get to know about
Acharya Chanakya told me, but he is not telling me who.
They killed your grandfather, you know, and they set your hut on fire.
I've learned how to please the authority in order to use the power in my favor.
Acharya Chanakya cannot hide the truth in front of Emperor Bindusar.
Do you know who my father is?
Yes.
I must tell the truth to His Highness.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Laugh all you like, but remember I could always beat you in press-ups.
Sini tu personal time mnaenda kuwa na rafiki yako. Ama si hivyo?
Oya, sasa utanipiga lecture ama utaniokolea?
You know, when things were tough between Paul and I kept everything to myself. That was my mistake, number 2.
What was mistake number 1?
Paul.
Next on
KICD, every stage from ECD. KICD, shule ya msingi na ya upili. KICD, mahitaji maalum na walimu. KICD.
Nilisikia kijiji chetu kimeendelea haraka, hivyo nimerudi kutafuta kazi.
Fanya nini? Amesema hayuko hapa.
Mimi wala simkwepi.
Basi kwa nini nataka tuondoke? Mungu, zimepotea.
Nitakupa muda wote wa alasiri hii ili uelezee juu ya wazo lako.
Kweli? Nikiwa kupata wawekezaji. Tuna pesa sasa milioni 10.
Milioni 10?
Euro milioni 10. Sasa umekuwa bosi rasmi, ha?
KICD.
The Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, nurturing every learner's potential.
If you're tuning in, you're watching KBC Channel 1 and this is Good Morning Kenya. I'm Regina Manyara-Gita, and now we want to focus on the socio-economic impact of Kenya's tax relief measures. This came alive some few days ago after the president amended to the Tax Amendment Bill 2020. Now, to just look at the gains, long-term and short-term, we have an expert this morning, and that is none other than the chair of ISPAC, that is Rose Mauro, to just help us look at what these tax relief measures mean in the long term and short term. There's been a lot of talk, especially some saying that they are more of post-COVID, while others are arguing that some of them contained there in the tax relief measures are a bit contradictory. We hear from an expert this morning, and would want to remind you that we are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube on KBC Channel 1 TV, so do get online. We appreciate your feedback. Start with your name and tell us where you're watching the program from, and just basically what you think about government's interventions in as far as tax is concerned. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Regina. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Now, Kenyans were a bit excited, especially after the speech on Labor Day, just hearing the president saying that indeed the tax amendment bill 2020 now is alive because president assented to it. But now, from where you sit, in a nutshell, let's just start from there. What do you think about the tax relief measures?
They were quite interesting measures because the government appeared to give with one hand and also to take back with the other hand. So from an overall point of view, perhaps the impact on the economy might not be that big. So perhaps some of the biggest winners, I would say, would be, for example, the turnover tax. The turnover tax was reduced from 3% to 1%, but the more important thing is that the threshold was actually increased from 5 million to up to 50 million. So if you're a company or an individual with earnings of up to 50 million, you can actually now apply turnover tax at 1%. Of course, this does not include professional fees, rental income, or management fees. And then for really small businesses or individuals who are earning up to 1 million shillings a year, they are then exempt from taxes because now they don't fall. Previously it was 500,000.
500 to 1 million.
Yeah, now it's been increased to 1 million in terms of the lower threshold when you start paying turnover tax.
So from where you see, these are just the immediate gains that you can look out for. Now let's go maybe bit step by step to help a person who might not know what was contained in the Amendment Bill 2020. So we start with the issue of exclusion of individuals earning less than 24,000 per month, to be excluded from the income tax bracket. What impact will this have, maybe from an individual point of view and from a corporate point of view?
So it's a really, I would say, interesting because, first of all, so we now have, I would say, pay as you earn. Anybody who's earning below 24,000 shillings now will not be paying any pay as you earn. And we were doing some calculations. For example, somebody earning about 100,000 shillings will take home an extra 6,000 shillings. However, on the other hand, you have quite a number of other increments. So, for example, let's say VAT itself has been reduced to 14%. But then you find that, for example, petroleum, there's 8% levy on petroleum. Before that, the base for calculating that 8% did not include excise duties and other levies. So that means that petroleum is going to...
Because I was about to ask you, because it was about to come up, in that we are seeing that in as much as with the reduction of PYE, especially for those who earn 24,000 and below, that means money in the pocket. But now, there's no correlation or does not commensurate with the other policies that have been put in place. And we'll come to that, especially on the issue, because Kenyans, when the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority gave its new figures for last month, Kenyans were expecting a reduction, a huge reduction on the cost of fuel, given what is happening in the global oil prices. Now the issue of excess duty being also factored in the calculation of pricing of fuel. We've jumped the gun, we've moved from the issues.
So I was just trying to say that there might be some offsets. So you might take home 6,000, if you're earning about 100,000, you might take home some 6,000 shillings extra, but you might have to pay that back in terms of the cost of some of the prices, because petroleum has a direct impact on manufacturing costs.
True. So it's a balance. We'll get to highlight the balance as we go on. Now we've talked about the issue of the reduction of turnover tax from 3% to 1%. It just came into effect in January, and the taxmen did not see, many people did not come on board for this, and there was a lot of argument that, hey, with the withholding tax, presumptive tax, now you've reintroduced turnover tax, which is not previously there. That's a bit too much for businesses. Some businesses have come to say that this reduction of turnover tax from 3 to 1% does not necessarily hold water for them, because businesses right now are not making profits as such. They're just trying to, stay afloat. What's your take?
So perhaps let me just go back slightly to the issue of pay as you earn. We have to keep in mind that the people who are in the pay-as-you-earn bracket are very, very few. We have about 3.5 million people who pay taxes. So perhaps those 3.5 million or slightly less are the ones who would benefit from the pay-as-you-earn. We also have about more than 16 million people in this country who are daily wage earners. So they have to leave their houses, go earn their 100, 200 shillings and go back home. Those ones will not feel that impact. So yes, when ISPAC, when the issues of COVID hit, and we saw how businesses were going to be impacted, we had made certain suggestions to the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury. And we were looking at it from two angles. One, the first angle was, of course, to keep people safe. Human life is very critical, to keep people safe and not to get sick. But for you to keep people safe in this country, you also have to, one, provide those same people with something to eat and a way to pay to earn their keep. Then that brings in the issue of business. So we looked also at what can the government do to help businesses continue operating, continue paying these people. So there needed to be some form of economic stimulus, cash stimulus to businesses, similarly to what we've seen in other countries, in the US, in the UK, in South Africa, to allow businesses to continue operating and continue at least paying wages. A lot of businesses in this month of April have either laid off their employees, and coming into March, they'll also lay off. So even when you have a reduction in turnover tax and you don't have any revenues coming in, it's really not going to help much in terms of continuing to sustain the economy.
The government, in response to that, especially on the economic stimulus, they said that Kenyans need to lower their expectations over them, especially when it comes to that stipend, to support business and also individuals, saying that currently the economy cannot sustain such. Are you saying that we could? Is there an avenue? Would the economic stimulus, the recommendations that you had made as a firm, as ISPAC, what avenues had you looked at? And when you say economic stimulus, what did it entail?
So, of course, as a country, we're almost we're in between a hard place and a rock.
Yes.
At the end of December, our debt was about 6.5 trillion. Yes. Remember, we raised our debt ceiling to 9 trillion.
Yes.
But we looked at other ways. For example, government could guarantee some loans to give businesses some soft loans. And those soft loans would actually be paid over maybe, I don't know, up to a 3-year period or something of that sort. And that those loans would actually allow businesses to keep, to be open and to continue paying their staff. We've also looked at what other countries have done. Of course, the issue of what you call the increasing the quantitative easing in other countries like the US. I think they've printed like $2 trillion of dollars to give people and businesses cash. The UK has done something similar to even continue giving business access to credit. So we looked at that. We also looked at areas of extending, for example, tax payments. Any tax payments that were due April 15th or June 30th, whether those could be pushed up to September or through December. Of course, we realized that we have the issues of tax that are coming up, but we had also made certain suggestions to the government as well. One of them was on the issue of government to approach its lenders for a moratorium. So, for example, out of our debt service, 33% goes back to China. Can we talk to China to actually give us a moratorium of up to a year on some of this debt? I know that the G20 countries are meeting this week, and hopefully there could be some debt relief coming out. But one of the other key things that we'll find out here is we actually, for example, last year in 2018-2019, we actually spent 16.2 billion, which is almost 1.4 billion shillings a month on travel by counties and national government, and perhaps more when you put in the national government. So when you cut back on such unnecessary expenditures, we could probably pull out some of money that can then come back to supporting the economy. Traditionally, we've had this budget of about 3 trillion.
Yes.
Can we cut back on that and just focus on what is necessary? And so there are different ways of looking at this. There are options out there.
Now, Because the government, with the current tax relief measures that have been put in place, has also has actually tackled the issue of VAT and PAYE, pay as you earn, that is it.
Right.
And this happened to be government sources of main revenue sources.
Right.
You're already talking about, there's the option of asking for a moratorium from China, at least for 1 year. How do you think the government is really going to bridge this deficit? Because definitely there's going to be a deficit for this budget in terms of, COVID was something that no one had planned for. How do you think the exchequer and the government is going to try and balance that?
To be honest, I would not want to be in the shoes of the cabinet secretary.
It's bad, yeah.
As we sit here today, it's going to be really difficult to bridge this. You've already heard that the collections for January, February were fairly low. And we expect that those collections, already our ISPAC members are calling, and even government saying, people are not ready. The little cash that business has, they actually want to hold on to that cash today, as opposed to going to pay their taxes. So something has to be done about it, because there's going to be a huge deficit. I can see that from even collections. And unfortunately, maybe KRA might just get a little bit more aggressive in terms of tax collection. But even when you get aggressive in terms of collection, when a human being has to choose between putting food on the table or going to pay taxes, for sure putting food on the table might end up winning, or a lot of businesses will just shut down.
People are preferring to, take care of themselves before doing their civic duty.
I mean, you must. You have a family. They're looking up to you for food. You have to shelter and everything. So people will actually look at that. So, and I know that Treasury is already. I think there were some suggestions to maybe not pay some interest on some of the bonds and so forth. So I think the government is exploring. I also know that they are exploring discussions with the World Bank consortium of organizations to borrow up to 275 billion shillings to try. I think last week they floated a bond of about 50 billion shillings for budgetary support. But of course that might not be enough, given that our budget traditionally has been at about 3 trillion shillings, out of which we've been able to finance 1.6 trillion from collection. There's a huge deficit.
Yes.
So we must really tighten our belts as a country so that we're not just spending willy-nilly, that we focus on just spending on what is essential.
You go through the books. That's what accounting is all about.
Yes.
From where you sit, and government expenditure has been, highlighted as one. There are so many loopholes. It has been identified as our weak link, and as far as how we spend in terms of fiscal planning and policy, it's affected there in terms of how government spends the monies that it actually collects from Mwananchi. And Mwananchi has been saying that things need to be done. From your end, where is the loophole, and how can we tighten our belt? Because it's right now we are not doing business. Business is barely surviving, and we have to pay our taxes to support government and government operations. How do we tighten our belts from the top?
I think from the top, it really starts from a budgeting perspective, because we've been told that about a third of our budget goes to waste through corruption and other means. So we must start by actually coming up with a budget that is very, very lean, that only focuses on what are the priorities. And in this case, our priorities will be things like healthcare, will be things like education. How do we keep children continuing to learn? And another priority is going to be on business. I don't believe we have focused enough on business to allow small businesses, the mamambogas, to continue operating on a daily basis, so that, because when they operate, then they are able to, it's what you call stimulating demand. When a business is still operational, it'll employ 1 or 2 employees, or 5 or 10 or whatever number. Those employees will earn something. When they earn something, they'll go out to the supermarket or to the mamamboga and they'll buy some goods, of course, which will mean that the manufacturer can continue manufacturing. right?
Stimulating demand. We've seen the government giving yesterday when he was giving his speech, Cabinet Health Secretary there, Mutahi Kagwe said, he said he was actually disappointed, and the government is disappointed given now the reopening of hotels, and Kenyans are taking advantage of that and just not abiding to the laid down guidelines. And he said the reason why government did, or rather took such a step, was to continue generating demand and supporting some industries as it could. In this current situation, we've seen people going back to work. Do we have the right discipline? Do we have the discipline? What is lacking? We have the high numbers and we're still doing business.
Of course, there are a few people who don't have the discipline. You've heard about stories of people who are being caught drinking in bars, in houses that are locked behind. So there are a few people who don't have the discipline, and I believe the government can deal with these individuals. But in terms of people working, I think in the last 2 days we've seen almost everybody come back. Not everybody, a lot of people come back to the two cities. And there's no way, it's difficult, maybe it's not there's no way, but it's difficult to ask people to stay at home. And they've been at home from
a month plus,
April 16, a month plus, yes. Okay, maybe 45 days. Yes. Their savings have been depleted. So you cannot ask somebody to sit at home when they don't have something to feed their children, right? So we must find a way to balance. I think some hard decisions have to be made, and it cannot be, the budget that we're coming up with cannot be a business as usual budget, because we have to find a way to stimulate economy, to get businesses back to working, so that they can now employ people, and people can then put something on the table. Or if we don't do that, then there's no way we can then ask people to stay at home, because they'll still come out to look for something to eat.
Very well said. Now, you've mentioned something about the budgeting process, that it has to be different. Last year's budget focused on the government's, or rather the president's big four agenda: food security, manufacturing, housing, and universal health care. From where you sit, what are the priorities? What areas should we give priority during this budget making? I know you've mentioned this issue of supporting business, but what other key areas do we need to really focus on during this budget making process?
So the way I look at it is that we need to focus, one, on food security. Food security is going to be very, very important, and you need to look at it even from the smallholder farmers, from how food is transported, how it's stored, so that, and of course we remember we're also dealing with the issue of the locusts.
Yes,
they're still there.
Toxins.
And the locusts are still there, it's just that they're not in the headlines, because now the headlines are all about COVID. So I think the issue of food security, the food security agenda needs to be very critical. But there has to be a way to make sure that whatever money we're setting aside actually is getting to the farmers, whether it's in terms of subsidized inputs, and in terms of just storage, the whole supply chain to be able to get food to people. I think the issue of technology as well is going to be very critical, because when I was thinking about who are the big winners when it comes to, I mean, there are always losers and winners in
this situation.
Yes, and I think technology are really part of those big winners, because issue of working from home, other technological, in fact,
any spending in terms of transport.
Exactly, the digital payments. How do you buy your stuff online? Can somebody deliver it? So companies that are agile from there are going to be the big winners. And then, of course, healthcare needs to be a really, really big focus. When we look at healthcare, for example, right now we saw a notice for healthcare workers wanting to go on strike because either they don't have adequate PPEs, and also a lot of healthcare workers being infected. So we must focus on getting in as many testing kits. So right now we're seeing such an explosion in terms of the numbers, but we're also testing more than 1,000 people a day, right? So that's going to be important in terms of testing. It's also going to be important to have healthcare facilities upgraded and workers, and not just in the cities. Remember, a lot of people, especially in the rural areas, will first of all go to the small clinics. Those small clinics actually need to be part of support, so that they know how to deal and to even have how to deal with people. Again, big winners have been manufacturing. We've seen that when we're faced with shortages, we know that we cannot buy masks from China or PPE from China. Kenyans have actually turned around and even repurposed their factories to be able to manufacture some of these masks. Of course, it's unfortunate.
To do the issue of lower supply, demand, and supply.
Exactly. So we can actually do this, and if the government can commit, and we know KEBS has actually certified some of these masks or this equipment very quickly. Within a 3-day period, you get your certification, you can start manufacturing. So this is great, and we need to be able to extend it to pretty much all areas of our economy in terms of manufacturing.
Now, you've talked about key areas that we need to focus on: health, issues of food security. Now, let's zero in on food in general. The way it is, the amendments on the VAT Act. Retain some of the, to retain some of the essential items such as milk and milk products, as well as bread at zero rate. How will this affect pricing? I know you've said it's a bit of an oxymoron. We need to get a balance. It's taking and giving on with the other hand. And also, let's focus on the issue that you also brought up, just around that issue of VAT, the issue of medicine and vaccines. Now that how will this impact on the healthcare system? Because now they're now exempt and not zero rated.
So from a VAT perspective, we have several regimes. We can be zero rated, or you can be what is known as exempt, or you can be standard rated, which is now 14%. Now, when you're zero rated, it actually means that no VAT is charged on that particular product. And I know that there had been a push to make bread exempt. So when you're zero rated, no VAT is charged on that particular product, and even for basic milk. However, the manufacturer can then claim back that VAT from Treasury.
Yeah, Treasury.
As an input. Now, when you are exempt, it means that the manufacturer cannot claim back that VAT, which means that the manufacturer's cost goes up, which means that the manufacturer then has to pass it on.
Down to the consumer.
So it's unfortunate that you saw medicines and vaccines being exempted, and even masks. They were then moved from standard rating to exempt, which means that their costs are going to go up because the manufacturers are not able to. So that's an unfortunate. It would have been good to retain them at zero rating. There was a push to also push a lot of products, including agricultural inputs, bread, milk, to exempt, meaning that their prices would have gone up. But I think that was then overturned by Parliament. And we hope that they will not be brought back into the finance bill, which is going to be released today. But even at ISPAC, we're ready to fight such if they are brought back in. Because normally when a bill is released at ISPAC, we actually take a lot of time to study it, and we provide our input based on what is going to be good for the economy, for the business, for the common mwananchi. And we also do a lot of lobbying with Parliament to make sure that some of these changes that are not good for the country are not passed as well.
Now, the manufacturing sector has already shown its worth at this point, more so at a better, it couldn't have been a better time. But now the issue of the electricity rebate that was initially there is no longer, has been removed, electricity rebate from the manufacturing sector. What impact will it have on this sector that has shown a rather proven its worth during this uncertain times of COVID-19?
So it's interesting that, when we started, we said that the government had given with one hand and taken with the other, right? So, for example, manufacturing is a good example. So when you look at, so for example, sorry, I've lost my track of thought over there.
Let me just try and take you back.
Yes,
we're just looking at the manufacturing sector. We've already said that we've seen a huge change.
Yes.
And they have come up, like the manufacturing, the local industry has put its best foot forward, right?
Yes.
But now, in terms of its interventions that the government has given, in these latest tax relief measures, it took away the electricity rebate that was actually put there to lower the operational costs, so that now this lower operational costs would trickle down to the consumers. Now it has been taken away.
Yes, so of course, one of the good things is that it's almost an eye-opener that we can certify a lot of products quickly from KEBS. We can repurpose our factories to manufacture a lot of things, quite quickly. However, you are right to say that, for example, the 30% tax allowance for electricity was taken away. We also have other critical allowances that have been reduced. For example, what you call industrial building allowances have also been used to previously get about 100% or up to 150% in that industrial building allowance if you are outside of big cities. That has now been reduced to about, I think, 50% in the first year, and then 10% on a reducing balance going after. So, of course, this means that some of those allowances that were for business will also go away. So yes, so it's the same thing. It's good that maybe their businesses will increase, but also their costs will also go up, and also the exemptions. If you're not able to pass through or to actually claim some of your VAT for products that have been made exempt, it also means that some of your costs will go up. So it's really an issue that business has to take hand in hand. So, for example, I do chair the Legal and Regulatory Committee of the National Chamber of Commerce here in Kenya. So one of the things we are also really looking at is the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce, which has given some advice, some input into this. Also, people like KEPSA and KAM have also given input, because sometimes some of the policies that are effected have a direct effect on, it's only the business who actually knows how that will impact them, and this feedback needs to be given back to the government.
Okay. Now, we had earlier on tried to touch on the issue of fuel. Mm-hmm. Fuel literally affects everything from transport to, just even the manufacturing sector itself. Mm-hmm. Now, Kenyans have been asking, and after the 14th of last month, they were expecting a reduction in price of fuel to drastically go down, given what is happening on the global scene. Now, from a tax point of view, is that now the inclusion of excess duty in the calculation of, calculating VAT for fuel. How has that, what role has it played, in ensuring that, rather keeping the prices of fuel at that point where they are, which I tend to think, in my opinion, are a bit too high, given the current level? Right.
I mean, one of the things we have to realize from a fuel perspective is that we buy our fuel maybe more than a month in advance. Yes. Because remember, it has to be shipped from wherever it's being shipped. So there's always a 1 month lag. So I know Kenyans woke up very excited. Yes. They were reporting, the price of, I think, fuel hedges is below zero, yes, whatever. Yeah. But that might not bear into our pricing until middle of May, right? Because the fuel that we're using now had been bought either in February, yes, or in March. Actually in February and March. In February and March, when the prices were pretty high. So we do expect some reductions in the price of fuel in the month of May. However, this will be offset, because one of the things I pointed out was that the base on which the VAT on fuel is calculated has been expanded, which will include excise duties and other levies. So that means that maybe if it was 100 shillings before, and now with excise duties it's 115, you're calculating now on 115, hypothetically, as opposed to 100 shillings. So that actually increases your cost. So I don't really know. We will not know until the 15th of May, when the ERC actually comes up and tells us what the new pricing is going to look like. But hopefully we'll get some gains from the reduction in the global prices of oil, but we have to wait and see.
Now, let's come to the services sector. Is that Parliament now rejected the proposal to have brokerage services exempt from VAT, meaning that they're going to be paying VAT. And the argument that government put forth was that the sector has come of age. We're talking about the NSC, and the stock market and so much more, in as far as the services, or rather brokerage services, now going to pay VAT. Insurance and the like. Yes. What impact will it have on these brokerage services going forward?
Of course, the initial impact is that it's going to increase their costs, because remember, all these brokerage services, whether it's insurance, the stock market, they actually work on very thin margins. So one, they'll pass on those costs to consumers, to the users, who is really the public. If you're going to buy insurance, that ultimately may then be passed on to you as the consumer. So that will have an impact on the cost of services as we see it, because then any company that is getting taxed, then especially if they're not able to claim these taxes from the government as input taxes, then what they do is they just pass them on.
Will that affect the volatility of the market?
I'm not sure if that will really affect the volatility of the market, because even at the moment the market has been quite subdued. And the big players who are normally the overseas investors, a lot of them have also almost sitting on the sidelines, actually waiting. And with not many Kenyans having cash in their pockets, you might not see a lot of Kenyans then investing in stocks at this particular moment. So it's really left to the big players at the moment, and who might not really, feel that 14% as much.
Yeah. Now, is the reduction of corporate tax an incentive enough to, to deter or rather dissuade corporates or rather private firms from layoffs and redundancies? What do you think?
No, it's not, because, corporate tax is really taxes on last year's earnings, and it's been a reduction of 5%. If you have, and remember that there's been no waiver in terms of payments, or rather at least deferring the payments. The payments are still due. They were due on April 15th, will be due on, by June 30th when your taxes. When we don't see that waiver, so companies still have to set aside money to pay their taxes. One of the requests we had made to Treasury was to actually waive or extend the period within which taxes will be paid, so that to allow companies to have more cash flow. So that's not going to help. I think what companies actually need is some soft loans, some guaranteed loans. So, for example, the government had proposed that some sort of moratoriums that the banks could give. But remember, this also just that it would have been good to make it mandatory for...
Other than just a pronouncement.
Yes, but now you have to go one by one to the bank. The bank can choose whether to give you that moratorium or not. And even when they give you the moratorium, they're still accruing the interest. That's still accruing, so you'll still pay that interest at the end of the day. So some of these, yes, some of the measures could be helpful, but I'm not sure whether they're going to be enough to actually allow companies to retain workers. Because remember, if a business, most of business don't have a lot of cash that they have in the bank to continue paying people. So if you don't have cash coming in on a daily basis, then you're going to be forced to lay off, because you cannot pay people from what you don't have.
Now, just in a nutshell, from what I've heard is that we are in limbo, and as far as the tax relief measures, some are good, some are bad, long-term, short-term, and in essence that their recommendations that you had made, including the extension of payment of these taxes. Now, from where you sit, you're waiting to find out what the finance bill is going to be all about, but we have already said that the issue of accountability, especially in how government is spending its monies. Mm-hmm. What role have you taken as ISPAC to ensure that, the transparency and accountability, both at the national and county levels at this point?
So at this point, one, from an accountability perspective, we continue to talk to government and just encourage all levels of government, both at the county level, at the national level. Of course, our members work at the various levels of national and county government, just to make sure, and we continue to make sure that encourage them to continue to adhere to their ethics and professional ethics and so forth, and to make sure that we are only paying for what we incur. So accountability, we're paying for what is necessary and at the right price. And that we also make sure we must account for all this money, because right now, a lot of money gets used on an emergency basis, but we must make sure that all the controls and all the proper authorizations for the funds are actually done. And of course, anybody who misuses government funds does need to, because it's really public money, does need to face the law around that. But as I said, critical thing is accountability, but also very critical is that government must relook at its expenditure and must cut out anything that is not necessary. And so we also applaud the fact that people not traveling is a good thing, because you don't have all these maybe, shall I say, county government people,
movements,
traveling overseas, doing what, and spending money unnecessarily. So that is also important, but we also need to look at cutting out all other unnecessary expenditure. And this is just for everybody, not just government, even a small business. You must relook at what is your unnecessary expenditure, and you must cut it out, or else you'll not survive.
Very well said, and we wanted to end that conversation. We have been having a conversation with an expert, basically the chair of ISPAC, that is Rose Mwaura, saying that it's not just about a business, it's also about what you have yourself as an individual. You need to look at prioritize your spending, save more for the future, because it remains uncertain. Remember, COVID-19, the cure is still unknown, and so far the country has 535 confirmed cases and 14 deaths. This is a time when we've been asked to be extra vigilant. That has been a conversation just trying to look at what government, in terms of its tax relief measures that it rolled out, or rather unveiled and were passed by the president some 6 days ago, and the impact it would have on the social economic development. We want to remind you that we are live, so do keep it right here. Doreen Murang'a is on the other side of the studio with the next interview. I'm Regina Manyara-Gitao. Have a good day.
Future of digital learning here in the country is our next discussion. Seated next to me is the lead developer, Smart Edu, that is Daniel Kuria. He'll be talking to us about this digital platform, especially for learners. Now, before you go to the whole aspect of digital learning platforms, let me pick your thoughts, especially from an educator's point of view. Let me pick your thoughts on candidates, especially KCP and KCSE candidates. This exam has been pushed, opening of schools has been pushed to June. What is your take on that?
Well, from the candidates' point of view, I think it's unfair for them.
What makes it unfair for them?
They haven't really been in school. They haven't really been engaging and interacting with their teachers. That would be my assumption. If they have, it's on digital platforms. That's not going to be. That's not going to be everything, is it? So it's a bit unfair for them. But in light of the current situation, I think it's a cost that we have to take.
All right. Now, what are some of the loopholes you can spot in the education sector?
I think the education sector needs to focus on creativity a lot.
Yeah.
Because we need to build and we need to encourage kids to work on their creativity, to be able to explore, think about what the next generation would look like, look at what life 30 years from now will look like, and then start working towards building that, because we need to build our own future for ourselves.
When you talk about creativity, break it down for us. What exactly do you mean?
This is basically the things that you can't teach. You have to provoke it in someone. This is something where people will come up with different things when you tell them to do something.
Yeah.
If I tell one person to make a car, they'll make something that looks different from what something else will build. That's what you call, that's the creativity that we need to spark in kids. Because we need creativity to be able to solve the problems that will come up.
Yeah.
One of the courses that we have on the platform is Creative Intelligence 2050. And it's basically just looking at what the next generation will look like. Yeah. Focus on what we have now, and then what can we build up from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, coming to the digital platform, which is our center of discussion this morning.
Yeah.
Tell us about this digital online platform. How can students access it, and what is the name?
So the name of the digital platform is Smart Edu. You can access it on online.smartedu.co.ke. Online.smartedu.co.ke.
Okay.
And this is just basically us trying to look at what is there that is being taught in class.
Yeah.
And then we break it down into multiple channels of delivery for the students, where we have video, we have the notes uploaded for them, and then we have questions asked at the end to test their understanding. And then on top of that, we have done something called smart tasks, where they're not graded, but they just try and spark the kids' creativity based on what they have been taught. Yeah.
So it's a holistic kind of platforms for students.
Yes.
All right. Now, before we continue even discussing more about the digital platform, was innovation, tech industry what you wanted to do as a person? Because when you're having this discussion a bit earlier before you came on set, you're telling me that you just finished university.
Yeah.
So was this what you really wanted to do as a person? Walk us through that.
So when I was a kid,
Yeah.
I wanted to be a pilot.
Okay.
And then I finished my high school, and I realized a pilot is just an airplane driver. So I was like,
didn't sit well with you.
It didn't sit well with me. So I was like, right. So what next? How about make the planes? So I went and did aeronautical engineering for my bachelor's. But during my second year, I developed a passion for technology. I started building basic websites and just went up from that. So when I finished my bachelor's, I was like, I actually don't want to go into engineering.
Changed it again.
So I changed it again, and then I went into master's and did my master's in computer security.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was more about tech and innovation. That is now where your passion was driven to.
So yeah, so I was like, let me look for something that will make me feel okay with myself.
Okay, again, also that brings the whole aspect of mentoring and learning to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But all that aside, now to the digital platform. Walk us through the process of developing such an app. How has it been like?
So it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge every step of the way. So I had to get a lot of support from people. There has been a lot of sacrifices being made for the development. We started about a month ago. We got support from a school in Kitengela called Ideal School. And they basically developed the resources, or rather, the teaching materials. We got support from my parents. We got support from the directors of the school.
This is Kitengela School?
Yeah, Ideal School. And it's been a lot of people working on the project. There's been around 30, 40 people working on it.
Wow. So that's like an entire team.
It's an entire team. Okay. There's a lot of people working on it. That's including the teachers, the support staff, and other people working from remote areas where they're sending in the information, sending in the test and the smart mocks, working on the classes to put the information, especially in class 8. We have done a lot of work on it. We've put a lot of classes notes. We've done predictor mocks for the class 8. Yeah. So that despite the situation, that will give them a better understanding of what is expected for them in the final KCPE exam.
Okay. Now you just mentioned that there has been a lot of challenges in developing this app. What are some of those challenges that probably you have encountered while working on it?
Mostly resources.
Resources always is a challenge, especially when you're starting up something.
Yeah, that's always the biggest challenge, getting the resources and then getting whatever resources you have, working with what you have to be able to produce something. Because you can't just say, oh, we don't have resources. Well, I'm going to sit and just do nothing. So it's been working with what you have, squeezing every little bit out of it to just get things moving.
Aside from resources, what else?
So coordination as well.
Because it's a team?
It's a huge team. There's multiple people working on it. There's people from outside. There's people sending information from outside. So you have to coordinate all this information being fed into one place. And it's not, the people working in there are not a lot. So think about all this information coming from multiple people, and you have to organize it and put it into a format that's simplistic for candidates to understand, for the students when they're trying to learn.
Okay. All right. So you also mentioned that, in terms of schools, and you really pointed out that Kitengela came through for you, which I also want to believe that this is one of the schools that has access to it. Which other schools probably have access to this platform?
It's the platform is available to everybody.
To everybody.
To everybody.
So it's not just in specific schools, if I can say.
No. If you go to the URL I just said, you can just register, and then there's also an Android app that we've pushed. It's available on Play Store. You can log into that, enroll onto the classes, and you start learning. Okay.
So give us the URL, especially for those that may have interest in wanting to access it.
It's online.smartedu, do with a double O, and then co.ke.
So the edu is not like the edu, edu, it's edu, D-double-O.
Yeah, D-double-O.
Okay. Also, you talked about the fact that, yes, again, it's important for KCPE students. So at least the only a set of students that can access this platform, or is it open for any other class or any other grade?
So we've developed it in terms of classes.
Okay.
So we're going from pre-primary 1 all the way up to class 8 at this point. Yeah, and all you need to do is create an account, enroll onto the class, because it's different classes. You have to try and keep account of who's registering and what they're doing on the platform, grading them. You have to have the account for them to create the grades and all that.
Oh, this looks like a lot of work. Now, is this like work on your side where you have to keep up with who's logging in?
Yeah, because we also have to consider the security aspect of it.
Oh, yeah, true.
You have to monitor who's on the system, what are they doing, why are they doing what they're doing, that kind of thing.
So that you don't get people trying to do some malicious things and targeting children and students.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that it's for both classes, not just for exam students only.
No.
And every other grader, any other class person can access it.
Yeah.
So the rollout of this platform, how has it been like?
It's what we're working on right now.
Oh, you're working on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're trying to generate interest in the app, sending it to people, get feedback at this point, see what we're doing right, see what we're doing wrong, and then move from there.
Now, how is that like? Because, I mean, ultimately, anytime you're trying, especially when you've just begun something, anytime you're trying to roll it out, trying to make people understand how it works, what it does, there's sometimes a bit of challenges that come with it. So for you as Daniel, how has it been, just trying to get it out to people? Has it been easy? Has it been going on? How has the process been like?
I think so far the biggest problem we've had with people
in terms of rollout?
Yeah, with people calling us in is the registration process. So because of security, we've had people to activate just to make sure these are actual email accounts and these are actual people registering on the site. There has been a challenge with people activating their accounts where they'll call you and say, oh, I can't access any of the material. I'm like, have you gone to your email?
Have you registered it?
Yeah, have you registered? That has so far been the biggest issue for us. But I think people are loving it.
Okay. Now, since that has been the biggest issue, activating accounts, registering it, make us understand, again, for the benefit of the learners, then how can they register?
So if you go into the URLs, there's
the one that you just gave?
Yeah, online.smartedu.co.ke. There is a place to register. You put in your email address, your name, and then you click on sign up. And then you're meant to go to the email and click on the activate your email account. And then from there, you should be able now to go and enroll onto the classes that you want to.
So it just looks like an easy process, but people have really been having a tussle getting into the platform.
Yeah, it's because we were trying to make it as simple as possible, because you don't want to be having too many challenges for people when trying to log in or to sign into your app.
All right. So even as you talk about this digital learning platform, because as it is, and we've kept mentioning even here in the show so many times that everything is moving online. When you look at businesses, work, even the learning. And yes, you are doing, this platform is for primary kids. So is there a plan to also have it for high school students?
So the plan at the moment, right now, we're just working on class, the primary school. And in the future, we're looking to incorporate high school once we get, because like I said, the challenge is the resources. Getting those people, because you will have to bring in teachers to come and teach. You'll have to get the learning material to be able to upload it. You'll have to get the notes. You'll have to get a lot of things done. And also for the high school, there is also changes which will have to be made onto the platform. Because with the primary school, it's multiple choice questions. But with high school, they have to write it out. So now there is that issue of grading. Because with the multiple choice, it's done automatically on the system. As soon as you submit the questions, it tells you your score. What did you get out of everything? Now it brings a challenge of, this is a paragraph that someone has typed up. How do you grade it? How do you check what points were needed to be?
How do you ascertain, this is right, this makes sense, this doesn't?
Yeah, and how to assign points to those. So that is we need people working on that to be able to solve that. That's a challenge that we need to solve. So for now, we're just looking at pushing this out to primary school kids. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that in as much as, yes, you might want to develop one for high school that factors, the factors of the fact that in primary there's like A, B, C, and D, in high school there's not, that is a factor that has to be looked at and considered.
Yes.
So does that mean that you have to get again another team maybe of high school teachers to help you do that?
Yeah, well, we have a team working on it.
Okay.
So I think it's just a matter of figuring out how are we able to solve this. And then once we bring in the teachers, because the teachers won't be able to solve the problem for us, they are coming to give the learning materials.
Okay.
So it's a challenge on our side to be able to figure it out and then tell them this is how to present the information, this is how it will be graded.
All right.
Yeah.
So as you wind up, talk to us about the future of technology in this country, and especially when it comes to learning.
So the future of technology is digital literacy. That is something that I believe we need to be focusing on as an education sector, as a country. That is the future of the country. We have everything, every business is being moved to digital.
Online, yeah.
And if we need to keep up, we need to be able to bring the Silicon Savannah properly from the US and bring it into Kenya, into Africa. And for us to do that, we have to train them how to use these gadgets and also show them, actually, you can make this. If you, because we have the creative intelligence module on that. We're looking at opening up computers, looking at what is inside, what makes that up. Are you able to create a magnet for yourself? Are you able to do this? And then can you be able to build something with what you have, with what you've been shown, with what you've been taught? And then once you provoke that intelligence, because we as ourselves, we don't know what the future will look like.
Yeah.
But once we provoke this coming generation, we are able to provoke that in them and push them forward.
All right, so provoking the coming generation, digital literacy is what we need as a country. That has been Daniel Kuria, the leader, Smart Edu, talking to us about digital learning platforms here in the country and where we are at and the future of tech, digital learning here in the country.
We shift to our gears into the next discussion of the day. This morning, now we are focusing on the effects of the COVID-19 on healthcare. And we shall be finding out what are the changes the coronavirus pandemic, the COVID-19, is bringing, especially when it comes to the healthcare sector. This morning, I'm joined by none other than Gokul Prem Kumar, the Vice President, Business Relations, Medihill Group of Hospitals. Thank you very much for joining me this morning, and it's a pleasure having you, and for finding time to come to studio, Mr. Kumar.
Good morning, Mr. Ram.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for hosting us on your show.
How are you doing?
We are doing absolutely fine.
Salama sana.
Yeah.
All right. Remember, we are live on Facebook and on our website at www.kbc.co.ke. If at all you have questions, comments, and feedback, remember to use the hashtag Good Morning Kenya on Twitter, at KBC Channel 1. Tag me at Ram Aguko, at Jane Omboy, at Ray Manyara, and at Doreen Arange. You can also tag them at Medihill H.
Yeah. On Twitter.
On Twitter.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mr. Kumar, the impact of COVID-19 on the healthcare is going to be felt in a very big way. Yeah. But I would like to start, first of all, by illustrating this. It is estimated that Africans spend $3.8 billion annually seeking healthcare overseas. Yeah. And in Kenya, we have over 10,000 people who travel annually to seek medical services out of the borders. But that is not the case, because for most people, we believe that all Kenyans or most Kenyans normally travel abroad. Yeah. But there's a different case here where we have people who normally come into the country to seek medical services. Yeah. And Kenya was rising as a medical tourism destination, especially here in Africa. We have so many people coming into Kenya to seek medical services. With the effect of COVID-19, how will this change these kind of numbers?
It's a good question, Ram, to start with. I think as most of the industries have been adversely affected because of COVID-19. Yeah. Among them, healthcare has been one of them, which has been, in a big way, has been affected because it directly impacts the lives of people. Now, when you talk about medical tourism, one thing which the world has seen in a very unprecedented way, the challenges that are being thrown at people. Because medical tourism always depends on factors like proximity of the treating destination and travel connections, and also accommodation, hotel facilities. Of course, treatment always has the first top priority. Now, because of travel restrictions, what we have seen in the recent past times, even the top destinations like US, Singapore, India, Thailand have been very, very negatively impacted because there has been no travel at all, right? So there has been needs for the people to meet their treatment needs. People travel, both we have inbound medical tourism and outbound medical tourism, where people travel from Kenya to countries like, let's say, India or Dubai, which we call as outbound medical tourism. At the same time, silently, there has been a growth in terms of inbound medical tourism also into Kenya, especially from Central East African countries and Southern African countries, and few countries like Nigeria and all from Western African countries also, which has been largely impacted because of COVID and because of the restrictions on travel movement.
But there's this belief mostly that for someone to get the best healthcare services, you cannot find it in Kenya. But you're bringing it differently.
I think
that it is possible.
It is possible. It is possible. It is very much possible. I think there is a big gap in terms of awareness. Most of the people today, like for example, let's say at Medihill, we have successfully completed about more than 85 kidney transplants so far in this country with a 98% success rate. Right? Most of the people are not aware.
For kidney transplants?
For kidney transplants. So I'm giving just as an example of that. Now we have a medical oncologist on board. We have a pediatric endocrinologist on board, which are a super specialty services, which very few people know that this country has got that kind of bandwidth to offer the healthcare services. I can put it on a scale, let's say, of what India is offering or elsewhere is being offered. About 80 to 85% of the services, except for the services like, let's say, bone marrow transplant or liver transplant or things like that. Remaining, all those things are offered in the country today.
And if at all you look at the borders, because for Africa, we spend 3.8 billion US dollars. We are yet to translate that into the different currencies that are there in Africa, and even in shillings. But now we have closed our borders. And for most countries across the world, they have closed the borders. People are not moving except for cargo. But now, how is this going to affect even revenue, the inflow and outflow of the same across borders, considering that we need healthcare services being delivered?
Before we get to that point of medical tourism revenue, which is depend on the foreign currency and depends on the people movement, let's talk about the domestic healthcare revenue itself, right? Within the country itself. Now, what we have seen in the last 1.5 months, there has been a sharp decline in terms of revenue, because let's say our protocols and our system and which doesn't allow, let's say at this point in time, to perform any elective surgeries and let's say kidney transplants. We're not doing any kidney transplants as of now, because of the certain conditions and restrictions. So that itself has put a lot of burden on private healthcare sector, which your revenues has been down. At the same time, there has been an additional cost, in terms of providing PPE to the healthcare providers, healthcare staff, right? And also using additional measures like sanitization and arranging triage, special triage arrangements, in terms of screening the people outside the hospital, providing special OPDs in terms of respiratory clinics, so that you don't allow if anybody having those symptoms of COVID, so that they get and mingle with the normal patients and, to avoid the spread of the COVID basically. So all these additional measures have put an additional cost implication on service providers like us, where the revenues have come down. So it's been a very tricky situation, and it's quite challenging to meet when your revenues are down and when your cost goes up to keep the operations alive.
Because you're restricted in your movement and in your area of operations.
Yes.
Now, that is revenue within domestic revenue in Kenya.
Absolutely, because if you look at the revenue-wise, if you segregate emergency services, elective surgeries, elective surgeries almost contribute to 50 to 60% of the revenue of any private healthcare provider. Now that has been largely impacted. Now, but what we also need to understand is these elective surgeries that are there might become emergency in a short span of time if those are not being addressed on a case-to-case basis. If we just generalize things and adopt a corporate strategy saying that all these services comes under elective surgeries and we don't have to address this at this point in time, but it's not too far when this will become an emergency and it's like sitting on a time bomb. Like, that can become another major issue in the healthcare.
But now, going back to still on the effects of this on medical tourism, as a nation, we are having certain challenges, especially when it comes to getting products, getting drugs, and getting what is we can call medical equipment. How long do you think it may take us to to be able to acquire some of these things? How has it been for you, especially now that you are in the private sector, to acquire some of these drugs? Because over-the-counter drugs are also reducing in terms of the supply.
See, COVID-19 has thrown certain kind of challenges to countries, to economies, to societies, to different domains, be it IT domain or logistic domain or healthcare domain. Now, coming back to healthcare domain, what we need to understand is that if you look at the evolution of any healthcare system of any country, be it US, be it India or Thailand or any of these countries, Singapore, it takes good 25 to 30 years for a system to evolve. Unlike
30 years.
30 years. Unlike if you look at a telecom industry or let's say automobile industry. Why I say this? Because let's say there are many countries which have not seen a black and white TV in their life, right? But they have a plasma TV, LED TV and all these things. So there was not a gradual progression. If you look at telecom, let's say today people have the best of the smartphones, but they would have not seen how does a landline looks like. So that's evolution what I'm talking about. And that's how gradually things will grow, which can happen. You don't see the basic thing, but you see something happening suddenly or the very ultra-modern thing.
The end result.
End result. But in healthcare, it doesn't happen that way. For you to need to have, let's say, a super specialist, right? A medical oncologist or a nephrologist, you need to have an MBBS doctor in the first place, you need to have a physician in the second place, and then you will have a super specialist in the form of either nephrologist or a medical oncologist, so on and so forth.
You cannot skip any step.
You cannot skip. So that's the beauty of healthcare. So that's why it takes a very good, I'm talking about like 25 to 30 years. Now, in that lifespan, in that product life cycle, now where we are is what it matters. Like when we compare to US or the advanced countries, what we are seeing today, I'll come to that point again. How we draw the similarities between the top countries today and between Kenya, things like that. So we are almost there. Let's say 80% when I spoke, we are almost there. But the learning point for us is the dependency, be it in terms of treatment dependency or be it in terms of dependency on consumables, on machinery, on equipment. I think the time has come where we need to give an emphasis, and that should be a major takeaway or the take-home message from this pandemic, that we should have less dependency on countries like China or India or other countries, where we give impetus our own manufacturing sector of, be it, let's say, masks or sanitizers or pharmaceuticals or equipments, medical equipments. Yeah.
When you've mentioned quite a lot, and I would like to start with one thing that you've mentioned, that it takes years for the health sector to evolve, to grow gradually.
Yes.
Looking at the growth of the health sector in Kenya and how it has been hard hit by the pandemic right now, would you say that we are likely to recover? Looking at how long Kenya has taken to reach the far that it reached.
Yeah. This scenario is very peculiar, basically. Why I want to say this is, when COVID-19 happened, people would have thought, you see, you always have some guesswork, some case studies coming out by Boston, McKinsey, and PwC and things like that, but sometimes they might go wrong. For example, when Ebola happened, they thought, West African countries like, let's say, Liberia, and even currently it is there in Congo to some extent. When they gave the statistics worst case scenario, it didn't work out that way. Because things got better and people started adopting newer lifestyles and better lifestyles, so things started changing.
Like in Kenya, we were given statistics
by WHO.
By WHO.
Recent, I think about a couple of weeks back, there was statistics which said that at least 3.3 billion people would be affected and 1 million people would die. I don't think that might happen. Yeah. How it's going to unfold, we don't know. That's the worst case scenario. But what I'm trying to draw your attention to at this point in time is, when it happened, people would have thought the third world countries, right? Let it be India or Bangladesh or most of the African countries would be affected because of it. But on the contrary, what we are seeing today is one of the best healthcare systems in the world. You know, France has been rated as one of the, not the best, not one of the best, but the best. Is the number one as rated as in the healthcare system. Like France, United States, Spain, right? So these are all the top countries in the healthcare system which have been actually badly affected. If you look at the top 5 countries today with the highest death rates in 3.6 million people who have got affected and 255,000 deaths that have happened, right? In that, the top deaths, if you take at the rate like US 75,000 and then Italy, France. So these are the top countries which are occupying the space. On the contrary, right? So what matters here is because the treatment has got a lot of limitations. In coronavirus, right? So what matters is how effectively you will be able to prevent from spreading this. So that's what matters.
You had written an article, I don't know if it was a piece, that you had mentioned that Kenya has got the most advanced infrastructure with ultra-modern facilities in healthcare.
Yes.
And according to a recent report by the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, the private health sector in Kenya is one of the most developed and dynamic in sub-Saharan Africa. That's what you said when you were talking about the rise of Kenya as a preferred healthcare destination in Africa.
Yes.
Would you still say that we can still remain to be the same, even post-COVID-19?
It will be, and I believe that it's going to get much better than that. Why I say this, because now when I say, like, let's say France is the #1 country in the world in healthcare. Now there are a lot of factors that involves, you know, number of beds the number of beds available in the country, and the number of healthcare staff available in the country, number of specialties that are available in the country, along with infrastructure. Now, if you look at our own geography as a continent, there are many countries, even today, without a proper, diagnostic facilities in place, proper MRI or proper CTs in place. There are still several countries. So in that matter, if you take it Kenya, we are far, far ahead. Today we are actually competing with South Africa and Egypt and matured healthcare systems.
At the same level?
At the same level, actually.
Wow.
Now, what matters is when you have infrastructure like that, when you have skill sets like that to offer, at what cost you deliver is what matters. So today, when we rise above the nations which doesn't have a good infrastructure to provide good infrastructure and good healthcare services, right? And when I say, like, they say cardiac services, oncology, very few countries in Africa, like about 3 or 4 countries have got what you call a PET scan facility, which today Kenya has got to offer. So what I'm trying to say is about the infrastructure and the skill set. Now, how you articulate that? Like at Mediheal, the vision has been to offer the world-class services at a very affordable cost to a common Vainanchi, right? So how you articulate that at a very cost-effective model is what matters in moving forward.
Moving forward. Yeah. And earlier on, you mentioned something about manufacturing.
Exactly. That's where I'm coming to actual next point, that to make it happen, you need to have a good manufacturing sector in place wherein you don't have to depend for your pharmaceuticals, for your consumables on other countries, so that if today Thailand or India are able to offer the same surgery which has been done in some part of the other country, some part of the world at a higher cost, it's because of their own ability to manufacture things and have their own consumables and pharmaceuticals, and because they're all part of the healthcare system.
Can Kenya manufacture its own healthcare products?
We can. I think that's where I think the government is also heading. Keeping as a 4 pillars, one of the top agenda, healthcare has to be part of that, universal healthcare, and then manufacturing, shelter and food production. I think the task has been identified in the right way, but how we execute, it takes time for each country, depending on their own capacity to execute that.
I remember you had mentioned there about manufacturing, that we need to manufacture our own in a way that we don't have to depend on other countries to get supplies.
Yeah, if you today take the classic example, a mask which costs basically at a 6 shilling or 7 shilling cost, if today it is like 50 shilling, 60 shilling, why is it? Because we depend on somebody else, right? If it is available in the country, local manufacturing, which is taking place now. You see the small cottage industries, small industries that is coming up. Now the cost is coming down. Now it's available like say 30, 35 shillings and things like that. So that's a classic example.
If we look at similarities, comparing Kenya and how other countries are doing in order to curb this COVID-19. specifically on the health sector. Would you say that we are on the right track?
We're on the right track, and we are doing as one of the in the country, and also, I mean, in the continent, and also as compared to other countries. Because if you look at right from the beginning, the moment it's been identified in March that we had the first positive case, the kind of implementation that has been taken place in terms of lockdown, in terms of curfew, in terms of identifying the hotspot zones and then seizing them off. I think what we are also trying to do, what I like the best is happening is balancing act, You're not going for complete, let's say, shutdown kind of thing where things might go out of the hand, things might get jeopardized. But then we are trying to play a balancing act, looking at the livelihood of the people, and also containing the zones which are high on coronavirus.
Have we had a difference in terms of the inpatient and outpatients coming into the hospitals during this pandemic? How has the numbers been affected?
Yes. So what happens usually, most of your IP actually depends from the OP, apart from the elective surgeries. Let's say medical management of some cases, people who are on diabetes and let's say asthma, pulmonary conditions, and BP and things like that. So those are the, when your OP comes down, automatically it has the effect on your IP also, right? Now, because of this COVID-19, even there is a general tendency in the people that should avoid the visiting clinics and hospitals, things like that.
Are they afraid?
They are, yeah. Keeping that in mind, what we did, we already have this facility of digital consultation through telemedicine, right? So a lot of consultations now happens through digital space, through telemedicine. And as long as it's necessary for the person to visit the hospital, to come and get admitted, it happens. Otherwise, we try to address the issues through telemedicine for now.
You've mentioned that telemedicine, and that is exactly where I was coming into. Okay. How far are we when it comes to providing telemedicine, in terms of telemedicine to our people, considering that people are different in terms of the classes, in terms of the income, in terms of infrastructure, different in terms of availability of resources. Talk about internet and technology. How far are we in telemedicine?
See, for any technology to be delivered and for any revolution to happen, especially in healthcare, what we have seen over the years in all these countries, the countries that I've mentioned, let's say Singapore, Thailand, India, it is the private and the public sector put together, join hands, and were able to deliver, something significant, which we evidence, which we see today. Similarly, when it comes to countries in Africa, the private players are able to do it as of now. I think the government
like Medihill
also need to, like Medihill, we are offering these services. We are offering these services also because, as I've mentioned you earlier, a part of our conversation, that a lot of patients comes to our hospital from, let's say, Congo, Nigeria, Somalia, and Uganda. So we have our information centers in these places. And then when patient wants to have a consultation with our specialist, we try to provide the consultation services online, which is through telemedicine. Okay. Now we are using that facility and that platform largely for the local population also.
Is it effective?
It's effective. It's quite effective. Actually, it has given much more weightage to this facility, though it was earlier there as a value-add service now, but it has become a norm.
What's the government input so far in terms of telemedicine?
No, see, if we want to deliver healthcare services in conditions like this, which was absolutely unprecedented, nobody has ever thought, see, in our generation, nobody would have ever thought that something is going to happen like this. It is absolutely like a World War scenario. Except for hearing the gunshots or bombs, going off, everything that has the ramifications of a world war, you can see it today.
You can see it, yeah.
Flights are down, borders have been seized, people are losing jobs, economies have got impacted. Everything it is there.
Do you feel their input towards telemedicine? Can you feel their input? Do you feel like they are doing something
moving forward
towards the private sector?
Yes, moving forward, the private sector, what they have been doing in a robust way now, it is the time that even NGOs and governments and other hospital people who are there to adopt the newer technologies in terms of delivering healthcare services on digital space.
Have you had a surge in medical let me say, manpower, in manpower, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, because people are afraid of going to some specific places, considering that they say that if you are hard to be coughing, some may get stigmatized that, hey, you may have coronavirus. So you'll experience a slight drop in the number of people who are coming to the hospitals to seek medical attention.
Yeah. No, that's where what I'm trying to say is when there has been, this is a momentary thing that's happening now, which has happened all of a sudden, and over a period of time, once it subsides, it may go down.
Yes.
But this phase has given impetus to adopt newer technologies.
Telemedicine.
Telemedicine is one among them. There are several other things. Let's say the technologies that we would have been adopting 5 years down the line or 8 years down the line. Now, this scenario has created a need that we adopt those technologies now kind of thing. For example, let's say we have been contemplating at the management level today that, we should have robot screening, triage from the robot services, so that you have less manpower requirement, and then patients have been screened by robots, and then once you prove it's a non-COVID thing, then it goes to a different clinic. But once it has been proven that, he has the symptoms of a COVID thing, then he goes to a different clinic, and things like that. So thermal scanners,
you've managed to reduce human interaction through having robotics.
Yes. Yeah, in the initial phase, so that you stop the spreading of coronavirus. That's the objective. How do you stop it? When there is a human-to-human interaction, there's always a chance to happen. But when you put the digital things in place, that you stop the spread and then effectively control it. Yeah, like thermal scanners you put, and then you put the triage services, and then you have the robotic services in terms of screening. So all these things will help you in terms of containing the spread of coronavirus, which is the major challenge at this point in time.
Well, just something to note. How has it affected you when you're going to work, knowing that the coronavirus is there? You're the vice president, at Mid Hill Group of Hospitals. Has it affected your work relations with people? Just in passing.
We are trying to take precautions in some terms of social distancing.
Okay.
Because we are not immune to not having coronavirus. We are also human beings. We also acquire corona. So the doctors, the nursing staff, they are all the frontline workers who are there, who are the warriors, at this point in time, are all very susceptible to acquire coronavirus. Okay. But enough measures have been taken now in terms of social distancing, in terms of hand washing techniques, in terms of sanitization, in terms of wearing masks. So all that is required is being put in place so that you are not also impacted because of the situation, because you need to serve a larger population.
And that's how you come up with this desire to have robots and other technologies being implemented in the health sector to help reduce such kind of stigmatization and spread of coronavirus.
Exactly.
And now you've talked about technology, and what clicks in my mind is innovation.
Innovation.
Post COVID-19, what more innovations do you see coming into place in the health sector?
You will see a lot of innovation, because why I'm saying this, the products that are there in the pipeline, be it equipment-wise and be it products-wise, more largely were on conditions like, let's say, cancer, diabetes, and things like that.
Yes.
Antibiotics, if you see, it has got a less pipeline because of the shelf life and because of the commercial viability of the product. But moving forward, you'll definitely see a lot of investments happening in terms of viral containing the viruses. And in those areas, you will see a lot of innovation that's happening. And also in the country itself, giving emphasis on infection control management. And let's say a private sector like Medical Group of Hospitals, we have one of the robust ICU care management infection control systems in place, which will become a norm moving forward, that in terms of infection control and in terms of having the ICUs and ventilators in place to address any kind of this kind of pandemics that are going to happen or take place in future.
Okay. And now, how has the society, been affected during this pandemic? Because we are having the contributions that are being given by government, by NGOs, by entities, by people who are who are involved in giving of charity. Do you see this even trickling in to have a ripple effect on the health? On healthcare? And as a private sector, what are you doing to cushion the society around you?
two questions to address this. Whatever the NGOs or the government and other people are doing in terms of taking care of people, it has to be done because when I say prevention is the only best option as of now what we have. So people work from home as much as possible and then maintain social distance. And for that to happen, people should be taken care of their livelihood, which I think by and large NGOs or WHO grants and things like that which are coming in place are taking care of these things. From a hospital perspective, what we are trying to do is bring as much as awareness as possible. Right from the beginning in the last 2 months, if you have seen our campaigns on social media like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, about maintaining social distance, hand washing techniques.
I saw a billboard somewhere along the streets of
yes.
I don't know where that was.
Yeah, it was on Gong Road.
Gong Road.
Yeah, near Afia House. And then we have a few in Nakuru and few in Eldoret. And most of these important junctions, we have put billboards in terms of bringing awareness of the about the coronavirus to common people to understand the ramifications if you acquire it, how to prevent it, more importantly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of that stigmatization, do we have any measures that we can put in place so that Kenyans can be able to embrace the fact that the challenge is there, and we don't have to feel stigmatized, even for people who have recovered and those who have been able to be counted among those that have been confirmed of COVID-19?
People who have recovered, we have to support them because there are some treatment options which are there, which are being taken into consideration, that the plasma that is being, the person who has been treated because of the coronavirus can be used to treat the patients who are undergoing the treatment, which are still under investigation. A lot of treatment options that are there, treatment modalities which are still yet to be taken as a proven thing, because we also see one of the prevention aspect which is happening about the vaccination that is going to find out. We have seen recently in the news that Oxford University is already started the trials, which we might see by September or October, the outcome of it, and millions of doses have been already started manufacturing, right? So if that goes right, we don't know as of now, that might be successful, or it might not be successful also, but then if it is successful, then we have some sort of solution coming by, let's say, September or October, in terms of at least prevention through the form of vaccine. But what is more importantly at this point in time is, this is a challenge that's staring at our face. We don't have to feel it as a stigmatization and things like that. It is a question of survival. Your own hygiene pattern, your own lifestyle, right? Especially people who are at more vulnerable, like with comorbid conditions like, let's say, diabetes, BP, kidney conditions, and people who are suffering from cancer and things like that need to be very, very careful. Have hand hygiene techniques. Keep yourself sanitization, wear mask when you go to public places, avoid public places, maintain social distancing. Next 2-3 months is going to be very, very challenging, and we need to follow all these techniques, change the lifestyle pattern.
How would you compare the different healthcare systems in different countries here in Africa?
Africa, as I said, we compare ourselves today with the more evolved healthcare systems.
Outside the continent.
Outside the continent.
We compare ourselves with other countries.
Let's say compare inside the continent, and then we can compare with outside the continent.
Okay, yes.
Let's say when we compare inside the continent with South Africa or Egypt, and then bordering countries like, let's say, Tunisia or Morocco, on northern side of Africa, we almost deliver what they are delivering today. But we need to work on our own cost factor and things like that. But when you look at countries like Thailand, India, or US, or European countries, we have got another step to achieve, right, in terms of, let's say, stem cell therapies or organ transplantation, which are happening on a wide scale. Let's say liver transplants, lung transplant, heart transplant, bone marrow transplant. We have come so far on this journey. Even kidney transplant is not a small thing. Right?
It's a big thing.
So it's a big thing.
And expensive.
With that success rates, right? If a patient is going outward somewhere, like people who come to us from, let's say, Congo or Uganda, they go to India or to some other country, South Africa, they pay 3 million shillings or 3.5 million shillings in total. I'm talking about as a package. But whereas in Kenya, they can get it less than half of that cost.
What lessons do you think we can pick from countries that people normally go to seek medical attention? We have India, we have Turkey, we have Brazil.
Yeah.
Name them.
Yeah.
What are the lessons that we can derive from how other jurisdictions are handling this COVID-19 that we can implement as
it's
a
a very interesting
here in
question.
Kenya?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Now you see these countries, Brazil that you have mentioned, Brazil, India. Let's keep India and Thailand aside for a moment. Brazil, South Africa, Turkey, all these countries actually fall in the top 10 of today's COVID, having maximum number of deaths. I don't know, it's a very ironical thing that the systems which are with very high infrastructure, the best what we call, let's say start from US, Germany, France, Italy, UK, Turkey, South Africa, Singapore, these are all the countries which are badly hit.
They're the most affected.
They're the most affected countries. What we can learn on a positive side is to be prepared if something like that also happens to us in terms of more number of cases getting positive and more number of cases getting, to be admitted in ICU. Because as you know that, in people who are getting having diagnosed positive, not everybody will get admitted in the hospital.
Yes.
Not everybody puts on ICU. But if a situation like that arrives, we need to be ready with our infrastructure and with our medical faculty.
Now, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga has been able to call out for reforms in Kenya's health sector. And according to him, he says, he sent a tweet and said that institutions like the National Hospital Insurance Fund, the NHIF, the KEMRI, the Kenya Medical Research Institute, should be strengthened to ensure that they are more independent. But now, he says that Kenya must start questioning the dominance of U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Unit, and instead allow its equivalents in the country to fill in the vacuum. Now, he said that, and I quote, "Let's question the dominance of U.S. CDC over KEMRI and its equivalents in Africa and seek ways to make these institutions independent, more attuned to Africa's needs." What's your thoughts on this?
I completely agree with him because, in most of the case studies, what we have seen, as is rightly mentioned, CDC, Center for Disease Control, draws always some guidelines based on some prognosis outcomes that happens after a clinical trial.
Yes.
Now, COVID-19 has given a scenario where we really need to look at it, because if you look at the corona strain, the study says that the strain that is there in India is different from the strain that has been found in Europe and the strain that has been found in US, right? So what I'm trying to say is human beings react differently. So I echo with his thoughts that this institution should be independent in nature in the first place. And also, we should have something equivalent of a CDC what America has for the African population.
So
because
we should have
African
our own
population,
CDC here.
we should have. Because your Asian population reacts differently, your African population reacts differently, your US population, so different race react differently to the drugs or to the trials or to the certain conditions. So we need to have, moving forward, institutions which are independent in nature, they take their own decisions, and also equivalent bodies like CDC for different continents.
We have had this kind of a call that we need to have CDC for different continents. Do you think that as a nation, are we headed towards that direction?
I think Kenya should drive these initiatives, because as a leader in the region, and also especially in healthcare, because the kind of patient safety policies that we have, the kind of protocols that we have, anyway we have discussed about infrastructure. So Kenya should take the lead in terms of driving things like this in moving forward. And you also asked a question to me that what lessons do we learn from countries like Turkey, from Brazil? They market themselves well. In today's scenario, what happens is anything that goes wrong, everybody talks about it. We do 9 right things, nobody talks about it. We do one thing wrong and the whole world talks about it. A couple of years back, we know about the neurosurgery thing that the whole world was talking. CNN was talking, BBC was talking. Do you think things don't go wrong in US or in Europe? We are seeing what's happening now. There are several things that goes wrong there also, but people don't talk about it. People talk about the good things, positive things. I think the time has come that where we also promote Kenya as a brand, talk positive things that are happening in this country, so that we give a positive message to people that Kenya is a place which can address their healthcare needs in the region.
You're talking about positive things. Now let me pick one positive thing that happened here in Kenya, and let's talk about that. We had students, Kenyatta University students, who challenged people, and they came up with ventilators. Now, remember, we are discussing the effects of this coronavirus. Honorable Raila Odinga said this, and I quote, "When donors are overwhelmed in their own countries, as is the case now, we are left badly exposed." Kenyatta University students have challenged us that with encouragement from government and private sector, innovation for healthcare can be done here by us.
Yes.
Do you believe that right now, the exposure that we have gotten, based on this statement, that we are left badly exposed, the exposure that we have as a nation is something that is a wake-up call for innovators in the health sector to be able to come up and bring sustainable solutions?
Very good. I mean, it's a very valid point, and you put it very well in a sustainable way. See, any innovation, if it has to last long, it has to be on some fundamental research that happens, right? And I think the time has come where really we need to look at things to happen innovative, and there is no dearth for talent, in the country. It's all what matters is how well we should be able to support, both from government point of view and from private sector point of view, that we support innovations like this, the ventilator that we're talking about. And there are many more other things that we are aware that are happening in this part of the world, which not either the Western world is not aware, or it's been suppressed by some self-interest entities, right? But all said and done, I think the time has come where things need to be looked at and emphasis should be given on innovation, so that we also stand out and address the maladies that are there, the solutions to provide, especially in the healthcare arena.
Now, according to, there was a report by Africa's Pulse report, says that Kenya is one of the countries punching below its weight in terms of availability and allocation of financing towards the healthcare sector. And, not just the healthcare sector, but also investing much less than it should on personnel and medical facilities. Kenya is spreading on healthcare per capita for each person, according to the World Health Organization, is $66. We're talking about around 7,000 Kenyan shillings against a recommended level of $86, which is 9,110 shillings for low-income countries. What's the ripple effect of this on the health sector?
It will definitely have its effect when the budget is being allocated. It's the nation priorities, social security in terms of food, and in terms of healthcare, education, border security. All these things becomes imperative when the government allocates the budgets, understanding priorities what they have. Definitely there is a need for the government to allocate more funds and more budgets towards healthcare. Because if you look at, again, one of the understanding point, if you look at countries like Singapore or the much evolved healthcare countries, the budget allocation towards the healthcare and education in particular is very, very high, because it's the belief system, that good education will give you good citizens in terms of highly skilled labor, caliber, right? And also protecting their health for being productive. Let's say if a person is on dialysis, he becomes, non-productive for the family, for the society. But you bring back him to normal life, he becomes productive for the family and also for the society.
So far, as a nation, we have used over 3 billion shillings on this COVID-19 pandemic. Do you think we need to invest more, and how can we have more influx compared to what we are spending? Because yes, we are spending more money, but where is it coming from?
No, this is a short-term scenario where you are addressing the challenges that are there on ground for now. But if you have to look at a long-term, innovation and delivering the solutions to address this kind of situations in future, or in the normal conditions that are already existing. Now we're talking about the communicable disease. Now, last 1.5 months, the whole world is talking about corona and about the communicable disease. What about the non-communicable diseases that the country is being challenged with? You have diabetes, you have lifestyle diseases like blood pressure, you have cancer patients.
We have forgotten about them all.
Yeah, non-communicable diseases are forgotten, right? But then that will become a challenge in a time span if those are not been addressed, right? So it has to be a balance between both non-communicable and communicable, that how we address these challenges and use the funds in an appropriate way. The world is looking at Africa today, right? if you have coming back to again the positive framework, positive mind of frame, what I'm saying, if you project country as a Kenya as a brand, right? People will do come and invest in terms of infrastructure, in terms of, innovation.
Okay, okay. Let's talk about the society, because I want us all to even get a glimpse. As Mid-Hill, what are you doing to help the society around you?
Excuse me. Yeah. In the first place, when I spoke about the prevention, that's how our tagline goes, patient prevents, doctor treats, the God who heals ultimately.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's our tagline. So what we're trying to do is...
Just repeat that one more time.
Yeah, it's the patient who prevents,
yes,
doctor treats, and God heals.
Amen.
And we believe in that.
Yeah.
And this is our value system, which has been embedded in every employee who works with this organization. Right? So in this scenario, what we're trying to do is, we are working on the first aspect of it, where patient can actually prevent it.
Yeah.
When it goes beyond the prevention mode, and when really need, that's where we come into picture as Medi-Hill Group of Hospitals. And we believe in embedding newer technologies into the ecosystem, right? And then delivering higher level healthcare, which is of world class, and also trying to put it at a very minimal cost to the patient, so that it doesn't affect his pocket, which is also one of the values of the universal healthcare.
Have you been giving out face masks? People are donating things.
We have been doing our part. We have been doing distributing face masks, sanitization equipment, and then the sanitizers, and these things have been distributed from our side. As a corporate social responsibility, we have been doing this.
How far is your reach? I'm aware you are in Kenya and Rwanda.
At all the 9 centers where we are located, both in Kenya and in Rwanda, we have special thermal scanners for people, so that we take the history of the patient, symptomatic, non-symptomatic, asymptomatic, right? And also providing the sanitization things at all the locations, and also screening triage, as we have discussed, is being provided at all the places, so that we separate these patients from COVID and non-COVID thing.
Now, as we bring this to a closer, if someone wants to reach out to you for questions and inquiries, how can they do that?
We have our email IDs, which is query@medihillgroup.com, and also info@medihillgroup.com. They can shoot their queries, and also we are available on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, which they can also reach us. We have a very robust website through which they can reach us. So there are various options available for people to get in touch with us.
Now, final question, Kumar. When you look at the healthcare sector here in Kenya, and I'm now going to talk about post-COVID-19, because now I've been having discussions with many people, and they say the world will never be the same again.
Absolutely.
Do you believe that it won't be the same again? And you're saying absolutely. If you look at the health sector, will the health sector be able to recover? We talk about getting the input of supply and demand. We're talking about the response of doctor in terms of doctor-patient
ratio.
Ratio. We talk about doctor-doctor ratio. How are we going to be doing it?
Let me say once again what you have said. The world is no longer what it used to be post-COVID-19.
Yeah.
As there will be a time frame for each industry to recover, each domain to recover, probably healthcare would be the first to bounce back. That's what most of the studies mention as of now, and it will be indeed, with newer technologies. As I've told you that this situation has given a need where we adopt these technologies which we would have adopted 5 years down the line kind of thing. So you will see that newer technologies coming into place. A lot of emphasis will be given on healthcare issues. Let's say people want to become a doctor. Right now they have seen what is the need of a doctor in the society.
Yes.
Right. So that point of, I'm telling from a basic point of view, to having the best of the infrastructure and health awareness, people modifying their lifestyle, changes in lifestyle, and also at healthcare delivery level, you will see a tremendous change in terms of innovation, and also in terms of self-dependency, in terms of pharmaceuticals or consumables and things like that, and getting better technologies.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much for finding time to join me this morning. I was with the Gokul Prem Kumar, the Vice President, Business Relations at Mid-Hill Group of Hospitals. You're doing a good job. Keep it up.
Thank you so much, Ram.
Right.
Together, tuko pamoja.
Tuko pamoja.
Yeah.
Commercial
Corona, yeah.
Commercial Corona.
Yeah.
Keep the tweets coming in. The hashtag, as always, is Good Morning Kenya. Well, that brings us to the end of this morning conversation, to the end of Good Morning Kenya. As always, it has been a pleasure being with you from the time we started till now. May God bless you. May God bless the work of your hands. My name is Ram Aguko.
Next on Corner.
KICD, every stage from ECD. KICD, shule ya msingi na ya upili. KICD, mahitaji maalum na walimu. KICD,
The man still exists.
Are you disappointed? What are you doing here? Wow, never join a welcoming committee. Harassment suits from stewardesses? Airline crew. And get with the program. Chorus Masindi is a gentleman.
She woke up this morning. I was with her.
That's great news.
What do you think about Friday night fights?
It will help the boys keep out of trouble.
It's in our best interest that I take part. I'm going to milk it for all it's worth.
How?
KICD,
The Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, nurturing every learner's potential.
Na nikuulize, kwani mtu akiwa live apeagu pesa?
Nataka uendanishe na Chris, umzindikishe. Wacha nibaki hapa nikiongea na Kamau.
Wafauru hata iko hata koda kibarua tutaonana.
Ebu jaribu, keti hapo. Kai Kamau, neke.
Habari Chris, umeingiaje hapa ndani? Unajua mtu hizi sema huwa mnatumia 300 kwa siku 4.
Ni kama tu mtu aweze sema unalipiago nyumba na bibi yako.